All right. All right. All right. All right. Welcome back to the live show. You know what time it is. It is your boy Genesis. It is currently 5:05 p.m. And of course, today's date is the 4th of August 2025. How are you doing this beautiful evening? Okay. It is Monday, okay? It is Monday evening. It is Monday. How are you guys doing? We are back for another episode. You know what time it is. You know what we do here. We talk about what's going on across the United States for the most part. And then we have a good time. All right. Welcome back to the Genesis Show. Subscribe to the channel. Uh, Support the channel. Whatever you got to do to keep the show going, do it. Okay. God is the greatest. Don't forget that. God is the greatest. God is the greatest. Without God, your boy Genesis would not be here streaming to you guys. So I got to give a shout out to God first. All right. And also, America is the greatest nation on the face of the earth. God made it so. And everybody watching right now, God bless you. Don't forget that. God bless you. And also, it is country before party. Okay, you might be a Democrat, you might be a Republican, but don't forget you are an American before you are a Democrat or a Republican. So, country before party. Don't forget that. All right. Right now, we're going to check out Life, Liberty, and Levin. Of course, you know who does that. The OG, Mark Levin. As you can see, the thumbnail, it is good genes, okay? Sidney Sweeney and the OG, the 45th, now the 47th president of the United States. Yes, and it says good genes. And of course, the title of this stream is America Has Good Genes. All right, here we go. Sit back, enjoy the show. Be nice in the comment section. Here we go.
Welcome back, America. We're here with Senator Tom Cotton, really a great patriot. He sits on the Senate Intelligence Committee. In fact, he's the chairman, as I understand it. Senator Tom Cotton, you gave a speech on the floor the other day that was absolutely spectacular. And you said, here we go in another cycle of blaming Israel for something that Hamas has done. They're talking about now Israel purposely starving the Palestinians in Gaza when all the evidence shows it's Hamas that's doing it with the help of the UN. What do you make of this?
Mark, it's just another example of how Hamas can count on an international media and political chorus to do its dirty work for them. I don't think any decent person can see the heartbreaking images of malnourished children in Gaza and not feel badly about it. I feel that way, you do, Israelis feel that way. But there's one party to blame for any children who are malnourished in Gaza, and that's Hamas. Hamas for years has used food as a weapon. It commandeers aid, it prioritizes its own fighters, it uses it to control its own people. Yet now you have way too many people in the United States and in Europe who are buying this hook, line, and sinker, sometimes open propaganda. The New York Times, for instance, ran a heartbreaking photo of a child who was afflicted with a terrible disease and passed it off as a child who had been malnourished because of Israel's actions. Nothing could be farther from the truth. Israel has delivered hundreds of thousands of tons of supplies since the beginning of this war. Our great ambassador in Israel, Mike Huckabee, was just there last week with the president's envoy, Steve Witkoff. They saw the aid that could be delivered today if Hamas would allow it to be distributed. But Hamas's one of their chief arguments and in points in the ceasefire negotiations is that only they and the Hamas infiltrated UN organizations in Gaza should get to deliver food. No other party should be delivering food to the civilians in Gaza. And I just want to make one final point about how Israel goes above and beyond what's required of any other nation. I don't remember from my history lessons, Mark, for instance, the United States providing food aid to the Nazis in Germany during the fighting in World War II. Yet Israel is supposed to provide aid to the Nazis in Gaza that committed the October 7th atrocities. Once again, Israel is faced with a demand that it meet a standard that no other nation in the world faced. And despite it all, it's still going above and beyond any reasonable expectation of what the victim of unprovoked aggression should do.
I want to underscore your point, Senator. You're saying that Israel is supposed to provide aid to the Nazis. In other words, what Israel's being demanded to do basically is provide aid to Hamas, because Hamas wants to control the process. That's what you're talking about. Israel's saying, no, we want to provide aid to the civilians there, but we can't provide it to Hamas. Hamas is shooting missiles into our country. They're killing our IDF soldiers. They're killing their own people. And what do you make of the media in our country in the West, Senator? I mean, do they have a suicide pact with these terrorists, or what is it? Are they just filled with anti-Semites? It seems to be an awful lot of that. The New York Times has been spewing the Hamas Health Ministry's data and casualty numbers. The Hamas Health Ministry is a fiction. It's Hamas. And we've had experts on this program, really top in the world, saying that's what Hamas is saying, it's not possible. But they repeat it. CNN repeats it. The Washington Post repeats it. The European papers repeat it. And they are fueling this widespread anti-Semitism all over the world. I don't really know what we do other than use free speech to push back hard, right?
Yeah, Mark, unfortunately, it's the reality that the liberal media in America has been chock full of anti-Zionists from the very beginning, and increasingly more and more anti-Semites as the far left wing of the Democratic Party has indulged more and more into anti-Semitic actions and rhetoric since the October 7th attacks. I know what Israel is going to do. Israel is going to defend its own people, and it's going to go and take reasonable steps to get aid delivered into Gaza, sometimes at the risk of its own soldiers, again, without any obligation to do so. Israel was the victim of unprovoked aggression and atrocities on October 7th. And never in the annals of history has a nation that has been so victimized been held responsible for feeding the people of the aggressor. But Israel is going to continue to do that, and we should continue to back Israel to the hilt to fight these lies with free speech and with the basic facts, not propaganda.
When we return, Senator, I want to ask you a question about Syria. I want to ask you a question about Yemen. I want to ask you a question about communist China, all of which slaughter and keep slaughtering other human beings, slaughtering Muslims. And how come none of this is getting the worldwide attention that we see focused on?
Shout out to OG Mark Levin for sure. He's been sounding the alarm about how people are literally saying Israel is, I guess, the bad actor. But I don't believe that. But everybody has the right to their own opinions anyway. All right, here we go.
Welcome back to Sunday Night in America. Federal judges are given life tenure so they can make unpopular decisions. Judges are supposed to be above politics. Many are. Some are not. One judge in California issued an order which reads like it was written by a Cal Berkeley sociology professor, or maybe Jasmine Crockett. Purify their blood? Targeted because of name or race? How about the law? I thought judges were focused on that. Judges say they don't want to be treated like politicians. Well, if that's true, then stop writing and acting like one. You don't get too far into temporary protected status before you find the word temporary, as in not forever, as in this is going to end. The language used by this judge will not motivate rational people to violence because rational people don't commit violent acts. It's people who set things on fire and help criminals escape and assault ICE agents with bricks and bats and vehicles. That's who we should worry about. Joining us is Acting ICE Director Todd Lyons. Welcome, Director. As if ICE agents don't have enough to worry about, we now have a judge accusing them of blood purification or targeting people based on name or race. I wonder if she knows you guys and gals actually don't write the law, or you just enforce it.
Yeah, Trey, thanks for having me. It's really unreal. These leftist judges are completely tying our hands from doing what the American people voted for, and that's for ICE to uphold the law. What they're doing is just, it's like you said, they're playing a political game using ICE and our mission as a political football, and it's not wrong because it's not making anyone safer.
You know, I actually saw something this past week, Director. It was a naturalization citizenship ceremony. And it, even for an old skeptical cynic like me, it was a moving ceremony to see people from all across the world who have gone through this legal process because it means that much to them to become an American the right way. I mean, I saw two ladies who looked to be in their 80s and the smile on their face. So, I mean, this judge accused the U.S. of blood purification. Go see one of these ceremonies where people take an oath to this country that they love and they lawfully join it. I wonder how many of your critics have seen one of these ceremonies. It can be done the right way.
Oh, 100%. And you're right. There are so many naturalized U.S. citizens that came here and did the immigration process the right way that are behind the men and women of ICE because they know what it takes and what an honor it is to be a United States citizen. And the people that snuck through the back door, all the gotaways, all the millions that were let in under the prior administration didn't come here to enjoy our way of life. And kind of like you said, Trey, you know, to have that experience and, you know, that moving experience of being a United States citizen. They came here to do harm. So when you have people and judges that talk about temporary protective status being almost permanent, like you said, the word temporary is temporary. We just had a Venezuelan man arrested in June who has TPS for aggravated assault, and it's a suspected member of TDA. Is that the person that Judge Cobb wants to keep in the United States? I don't think so.
You know what? Then she needs to sit down and have the next conversation with the victim's family, because that's the conversation that's really hard to have, is when ICE agents or you have to sit down with families that are victimized by someone who was not here lawfully and explain why they were not removed. Judges don't have to have that conversation. You do. Tell us about agent morale and safety.
Well, I tell you what, I've been doing this job for 20 years now. I've never seen morale this high. I've never seen the men and women of ICE actually be excited to do their mission again. It is hard, though. You know, right now, their morale is high, but they're worried about their own safety. Never have I seen leftist politicians and activists attack federal law enforcement the way it is. That's what keeps me up at night, is the fact that there's so much targeted violence and targeted threats against the men and women of ICE for just going out there and doing their daily law enforcement mission. It's really frustrating because all they want to do is be the law enforcement officers they signed up for. Yet we get labeled Gestapo, Nazis, doxing against family members. It's just not right. But the men and women of ICE are excited for what we're doing. They're excited to have President Trump have their back, have a great leader like Secretary Noem that's supporting us every bit of the way. With the funding from the big, beautiful bill, we're going to be able to make sure our agents are taken care of, have great equipment. So it's a good time to be with the ICE organization.
Well, Director, since we're sharing what keeps us up at night, what keeps me up at night is figuring out the illogic of congressional former colleagues of mine who passed the laws that you enforce, and yet they blame you for enforcing the laws they pass. That's what keeps me up at night, is how illogical that is.
You know, Trey, you're right. I mean, like you said, these laws have been codified for decades. And, you know, elected officials have had the chance to change it. If they don't like the laws, do something about it. Get together in Congress and come together and come up with a new immigration process. But don't demonize my men and women or target them just because they're doing the job they're supposed to do and enforcing the law the way it's written.
Yep, that's a good place for us to end. Dear Congress people, do not blame and demonize us for enforcing laws you passed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. A lot of people are saying, you know what, ICE are moving like they are actually targeting some citizens or some people that look like, you know, they look a certain way. But you got to understand that they're actually doing their jobs. All right. So if you feel like you're being targeted, all you have to do is show them your ID, tell them, this is my ID, and show that you are actually in the United States legally. That's all it is. Don't argue. Don't start getting all emotional and screaming. No. Okay. It's just like a traffic stop. When the police stops you for whatever speeding and you feel like you were not speeding, don't start screaming. Just tell them, this is my driver's license. I feel like I wasn't speeding, but okay, do what you got to do. Same way with ICE. Show them your proof of, I guess, citizenship. Everybody has their ID in their wallet. Everybody has their ID in their wallet. So show them your wallet or show them your whatever you got in your wallet to prove that you are actually in the United States legally and go on about your day. You don't have to run away from ICE. You don't have to start shouting at ICE or start getting all physical with ICE. That's it.
Well, I'd love him to lower interest rates. But other than that, what can I tell you?
In support of our goals, today the Federal Open Market Committee decided to leave our policy interest rate unchanged.
Too late, pal. He's terrible, the Federal Reserve Chairman. It was a mistake. I put him in, and then Biden extended him.
Oh.
Welcome back to Sunday Night in America. Those hoping for a rate cut were disappointed for the fifth time in a row. Fed Chair Jerome Powell and most of his colleagues left rates where they are. There were, however, two dissents, which is unusual and perhaps foreshadowing. More trade deals are coming to fruition, but the markets need some haloperidol. Here to explain the state of our economy is Senate Banking Chair Tim Scott. Welcome, Mr. Chairman. And by the way, happy anniversary. 1 year ago today, you were married. So thank you for spending your anniversary with us and not with your wife, Mindy. I'm sure she will understand. I'm kidding. I'm sure that you will leave immediately and go see her. Let's talk interest rates.
It's good to be with you always, Trey. Yes, sir.
Likewise. President Trump wanted a rate cut. Fed Chair Powell did not. Fed Chair Powell got his way. What are we to make of that?
Well, listen, for our economy to continue to boom, what we need is lower interest rates. Why? Because we almost are at full employment. Prices are relatively stable. Inflation's at about 2.7%. So what else is there left for us to have the best economy we could have? Lower interest rates. The EU have had multiple rate decreases while we've remained the same. It puts us in an anti-competitive global marketplace because our interest rates are too high. Jay Powell, let's lower our interest rates. It's the right thing for the American people. Forget about Trump. Forget about Biden. Let's just do the right thing for the American people, Trey.
All right, Chairman, speaking of global markets, trade deals with the EU and other countries are in place. Hopefully, we can reach an accord with Canada and Mexico. But then comes China. So that's the big one. Yeah. What do you expect as obviously Chinese leaders are watching these other trade deals come to fruition? What should we expect when the U.S. and China sit down?
Well, President Trump has done a fabulous job of putting the American worker first by opening markets around the world for our workers. We have to remember a couple things about China. Number one, they lie, they cheat, and they steal. That's really important. But number two, they own more than $1 trillion of our debt. Threading that needle could only happen in the hands of President Trump. We need a deal done, but it has to create greater access so more of our goods and services are entering into China so that our workers have the best future in the best world possible. And that takes good leadership from President Trump. All
right, Chairman, I'm going to pivot for a second. Despite everything else you have going on, you have managed to find time to write yet another book. Our culture tends to make the wrong names famous, while good people deserving of attention get none. Your book is titled One Nation, Always Under God. And I think you seek to change that by shedding light on some people whose names maybe we don't know, but we should.
Yeah, Trey, I wrote the book One Nation, Always Under God, available today at Amazon.com. I wrote it because I think we have to look to our future and ask ourselves, how do we remain the city on the hill? Trey, the fastest, most effective way to do so is to remember how we got to the place we are. It is a Judeo-Christian foundation that undergirds the success and the prosperity and the significance that the American people are experiencing today. I tell stories of courage, profiles of courage of amazing, remarkable, ordinary people who respond to the call of God in their hearts to change a part of this nation for the better, whether that's healthcare, law enforcement, military, mental health. Amazing Americans, everyday people stood up and did the right thing. And you can read all about it in my new book, One Nation, always under God.
All right, Chairman, before I let you go, give us one name of someone who struck you that maybe you and I didn't learn about in history class, but we should have.
Well, there's a guy named Norman Burlog who was a farmer, grew up in a farming family. He learned to pray. Galatians 6:7 reminds us, whatever you sow, that's what you're going to reap. So he took the power of the soil and he learned how to create crops in desolate places where it was too dry to grow, places in Mexico. He saved more than 1 billion lives because he took his ingenuity plus faith and prayer to deliver for a globe, a world full of starving people. He changed the course of history, and very few of us know his name. But that's what everyday Americans do all the time. We change the course of history because we serve a mighty God. Get your copy of One Nation, Always Under God right now.
Senator Tim Scott from the great state of South Carolina has found time to write what I'm sure is going to be another best-selling book. By the way, I think Dollar Tree is still open. Run on and get Mindy something before you head home. And happy anniversary to you and her.
Shout out to Tim Scott. Shout out to Tim Scott. All right, here we
Hello,
go.
America. I'm Mark Levin, and this is Life, Liberty, and Levin Sunday. Thank you for being here. Two great guests, Senator Tom Cotton and Mark Thiessen. They're absolutely superb, but so are you. So thank you for being here. I want to talk a little bit tonight about this massive scandal that's going on directed at Donald Trump and we, the American people. I want to thank those of you who have purchased a copy of On Power, and I want to read just a paragraph, and then I want to move right into this because it's very, very important. So stick with me. I think you're gonna appreciate it. You know, I talk in my book about negative and positive power. But right now, I want to talk about negative power for a moment in my book On Power. In governments born of and ruled through negative power, the legitimacy of the government and the way power is executed are without lament or moral and rational circumspection. There is a frightening callousness in the mindset of the rulers and a cold-blooded brutality to their rule. For modern Western societies, most of which are said to be advanced, enlightened, and democratic, negative power is more opaque, or what I call soft negative power, that is more opaque than flat-out Marxist, fascist, Islamist regimes. Political parties and political movements in the West look for advantages in acquiring, holding, and expanding their power, whether changing election laws, governing increasingly through non-representative bureaucracies and so-called independent agencies and commissions, the rule of carefully selected judges or judicial councils and the like. The conflict between honoring and complying with the institutional limits placed on power and the allure of self-aggrandizement is both real and perhaps inevitable over time. As such, the once authentic and thought to be effective institutions for limiting excesses of power are transformed into Potemkin-like fictions, used to disguise the true intentions of the abusers, and worse, are transformed into tools in support of the exercise of what I call soft negative power. This is authoritarian democracy. Now, pretty heady stuff, right? Well, it's true. And in many respects, we're living in an authoritarian democracy right now. It is one that is embraced, advanced, and promoted by the Democrat Party and their ideological supporters. This scandal involving Obama and Hillary Clinton, target against Donald Trump, our electoral system, and Mr. and Mrs. America, is so stunning in scope that it cannot be discussed enough. And for those of you who are obsessed with the Epstein case, you are the ones who are distracting us from the Obama-Hillary case. I don't know what your end game is with the Epstein case, but I know what my end game is here. That is justice, and that is a course correction for our country. Hillary Clinton was in charge of the Russian collusion scandal while she was Secretary of State, the candidate of the Democrat Party for president. Hillary Clinton, her campaign paid for the notorious dossier, Fusion GPS, and former British spy Christopher Steele. They conveyed to Donald Trump as a Russian spy and operative. The payments were concealed as legal fees through a prominent Washington, D.C. law firm. So they're trying to cover their tracks. The Hillary Clinton dossier was circulated throughout federal law enforcement and the federal intelligence agencies. Think about this step by step. The Clinton campaign denied any role when asked. Clinton campaign operatives also denied any role before Congress. Same with their lawyers. The Obama regime, so we have the Clinton campaign, the Obama regime, the federal government, worked hand in glove with the Hillary Clinton campaign and their efforts. In July 2016, CIA Director John Brennan informed President Obama that Hillary Clinton was going to concoct and employ a Russia collusion strategy between candidate Donald Trump and Russian President Putin to draw attention away from her own violations of the Espionage Act in her email scandal. The CIA's career analyst found no evidence of collusion between Trump and the Russians or Trump's campaign and the Russians. None. So in December 2016, they had to fix this, did the Obama regime. After a meeting in the Oval Office involving President Obama, the Attorney General, the FBI Director, the Director of National Intelligence, Special Assistant Susan Rice, I believe, and CIA Director Brennan was directed by Obama to change the CIA assessment by the career analysts. Got that? Brennan used the Steele dossier, among other unreliable bits of information, to change the assessment. And he did it in less than a month. Because Obama wanted it done while he was still president, early enough in January, where they could spread the word. The CIA career analysts actually objected. The dossier, they said, ran counter to fundamental tradecraft principles. The Obama regime and the Clinton campaign leaked relentlessly to a supportive media. It was fed to the New York Times and CNN and AP and the Washington Post and scores of other media outlets. They regurgitated what the government said. Talk about Putin and Russia. This is America's Pravda. That's what it is. The FBI earlier used the dossier as the basis for getting not one, but 4 FOIA warrants. They got one and they got 3 extended. And that dossier, paid for by Hillary Clinton, known to be false, was used time and again in front of a federal secret court to get warrants against the Trump campaign. Special counsel was appointed to launch a criminal investigation, the so-called Mueller investigation, into the so-called Russia collusion Trump scandal. So now we had a criminal investigation, taking up time of the president, taking up time of his family, taking up time of his administration. The goal was to cripple the Trump administration, as the goal was to cripple the Trump campaign, to interfere with it, to prevent it. So who was acting like the KGB or the East German Stasi? Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, our CIA, our Director of Intelligence, our FBI. So in comes the choir. The House Democrats launched an impeachment inquiry, initially based on the so-called Russia-Trump ties. You see, it was all working beautifully. The Hillary campaign, the executive branch controlled by the Democrats, the House controlled by the Democrats, the media, the administration of the Hillary campaign, all accused Donald Trump, his campaign, and his supporters of being Putin operatives or puppets, that it influenced Trump's campaign so he would have a victory and would corrupt his presidency. We heard it over and over again. Now, Senator Grassley the other day releases the declassified appendix to the 2023 Durham report. And the newly classified information revealed last week, those documents, also show that this Clinton-Obama conspiracy was even broader. Ahead of the 2016 election, emails hacked from George Soros's Open Society, they believe by the Russians, they show plans to push the Russia collusion hoax into leading U.S. publications, quote unquote, through FBI-related entities. Oh, wow, and I thought our First Amendment and freedom of the press was supposed to be watchdogs of the media. No, it's the Pravda media. And that Hillary Clinton was all in for pushing the Trump-Russia collusion hoax, again, to distract from her own email scandal, which truly violated the Espionage Act. The appendix shows communications between DNC chair at the time, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and 2 people from the Soros Open Society Foundation, Why isn't that guy and his son in that organization ever looked at by Congress or anybody else? Memos talk about Obama's intentions to shut down the Hillary Clinton email investigation and to link Trump to Russia. The memos go on to describe elaborate plans to push these stories into the media. Recently, FBI Director Kash Patel discovered so-called burn bags filled with thousands of presumably classified documents dating back to the Russia collusion hoax probe during the 2016 election. You know what that's called? Obstruction. How is it that those documents weren't in the hands of the Congress or weren't in the hands of the FBI or the special counsel? It included a copy of the appendix to the Durham report, but a hell of a lot more. The stash reportedly includes information from foreign sources, warning that the FBI would spread the Russia collusion hoax against Trump that would claim it helped him win the election, should he win the election, even before the hoax was actually started. The New York Times and the Washington Post have just reported that this is all nonsense. We kind of knew all this anyway. Well, they would, because they were part of the conspiracy to undermine our country. But that's just the beginning of it. That's just the beginning of it. So what happens? Well, what happens is that Donald Trump becomes a private citizen, and they're worried about Donald Trump. They figure he wants to run for president again. There's serious questions, raised about the 2020 election. Shh, but you're not allowed to talk about it. Look what these people did here. They're capable of anything. Anything. Look at the lawyers they hire that go into these states to try and change the election laws. They're there right now. This is what I mean by negative power. This is what I mean in the book, On Power. But they weren't done. They just got started. There's Donald Trump, minding his own business. But that wasn't good enough. So what did they do? They brought in a special counsel named Jack Smith. They brought him in from The Hague because he's used to dealing with, potentates, genocidal maniacs. So we got to get Trump. So what happens? Ultimately, federal charges in Washington, D.C., the January 6th case, so forth. What charges? For what? The 1871 Ku Klux Klan Act? The Enron Obstruction Act? 2 charges on that. Conspiracy to defraud the government, a statute that's used for government contractors? Well, the Supreme Court is asked to step in, and they do. They say that Enron Obstruction Act has nothing to do with it. Eventually, the entire case is tossed by the Supreme Court because of presidential immunity, which those of us who actually understand the Constitution and believe in it have spent, how many years is it now? 45 years practicing law and supporting it? Knew that that would happen. But that wasn't enough. We have the documents case. What documents? Documents. We got to get them for the Espionage Act, Presidential Records Act, obstruction, false statements. We've got Trump now. 40 felony counts. 40. 32 counts under the Espionage Act. 8 counts for false statements and obstruction. We got him now. We even sent the FBI SWAT team in there. They searched, the private premises. We took pictures. We showed the whole world. We got him now. We have legal analysts coming on. That documents case, I think they have him now. He sent in an FBI SWAT team to Mar-a-Lago to search his private residence on a former president of the United States. The entire case was thrown out. Why? Well, they made a little mistake over there, Merrick Garland and the crew. They violated the Appointments Clause of the Constitution. In fact, 2 former attorneys general, Lucchese and Meese, filed briefs in the federal court in Florida. They were so disgusted, they said, Jack Smith was appointed unconstitutionally. And the federal judge agreed, even though the Democrat media and the Democrat mouthpieces were pressuring her to buckle. She can't be that smart. What is she, a hack? Incredibly smart. And no, she's a damn good judge. So that case is thrown out. Oh my goodness, 2 federal cases gone. But don't worry, we have the Fulton County, Georgia case with a district attorney there. Fannie Willis, I think her name was. She's the best of the best. Man, she'll do what we need her to do. 13 counts alleging conspiracies, false statements, state RICO violations. Now we got Trump. Well, 5 counts were dismissed right away under the Supremacy Clause. And the DA was recently removed by an appellate court that said she had an appearance of impropriety and a conflict of interest. Why? Well, she had a romantic relationship with one of the lawyers and, all that kind of stuff. Where is that case now? It's just sitting there because the Supreme Court's immunity decision will eventually end that case. It's pretty well dead. Well, we always have Al Bragg. Oh, our man Alvin Bragg in Manhattan. That guy, he can be counted on. He was Mandami before there was a Mandami. Oh, yeah, he knows what to do. 34 felony charges on falsification of records. Now, this guy, this DA, campaigned on indicting Donald Trump for something, for anything. He should have had his legal license pulled, but in New York, never. Judge was conflicted all the way. Highly partisan Democrat, donated to Biden, but he wasn't going to step aside. No, nobody was going to force him. Again, it's the legal system in New York. So what did they do? It was a Stalinist witch trial. The ugliest damn thing we've ever seen in this country. Violated the Constitution, due process, equal protection, the Supremacy Clause, the First Amendment, free speech with his phony gag orders while he's running in the Republican primary. The Sixth Amendment, you actually have a right to know what you're being charged with, but they never would say what the underlying crime is, and they never have. Prejudicial jury instructions, probative evidence rule. They would allow anything in there except what was probative. Judicial impartiality, failure to recuse, and on and on and on, and it's on appeal. It won't last. Regardless of where this case winds up, it won't last. Oh, and then we have Letitia James. As I understand, she's being criminally investigated for lying about her mortgage. So here's the irony. She digs out an old consumer protection statute that has no application whatsoever. She campaigned on indicting Trump, too. It's what the Democrats do in New York. They don't lose their licenses. They get elected. Now, the judge who oversaw this case was not only a moron with a very low negative IQ, he was an elected partisan Democrat. He was eventually removed from the case, by the appellate court. He was such a humiliation and an embarrassment. But the media liked him, just like they liked Mershon. And by the way, there was an allegation of fraud, multiple cases of fraud under this consumer protection statute, but there was no fraud. Nobody lost any money. They made money. The creditors were thrilled. These were big lending institutions. They were told, look, if you don't agree with our valuation of a property, go do it yourself, which they would do anyway. They know how to do it. There wasn't a single witness against Donald Trump, not a single creditor against Donald Trump, but it didn't matter. Didn't matter. That case is still sitting there. Alleged overvaluation of properties where there was none. In fact, they were undervalued. $18 million from Mar-a-Lago, I'd raise the money tomorrow and buy Mar-a-Lago for $18 million. Hell, I'd buy it for $50 million. It's worth billions. Alleged damages. There were no damages. Creditors earned money. On top of this, we get 2 impeachments by the Democrats. And another promise should they win the House. They don't even know what they're talking. Doesn't matter. Get us in. We're going to impeach him. And then, of course, they sought to keep him off the ballot, turning the 14th Amendment, which they hate. They hate the Constitution. It was written by white slave owners. I thought that's what they told us. Using the 14th Amendment to try and prevent Donald Trump from getting on the ballot in several states. These people are evil and they're devious. And the reason is why this book isn't specifically written about them. It's written about them and people like them. Do you understand that our republic came within an inch of being lost? That these institutions still exist? That the media are still out there, lying as they do, covering up for the Democrats because they are Democrats, covering up for the Marxists because they are Marxists, covering up for Hamas and the Islamists because they are laced with supporters of Hamas. The New York Times today basically saying these aren't scandals and so forth. The very New York Times, they covered up the Holocaust. The very New York Times that has regurgitated whatever data Hamas gives it. The very New York Times that puts phony pictures on its front page and pushes anti-Semitism. That New York Times that covered up the Hunter laptop that participated in this horrendous assault on the American people that's going on to this day. That New York Times. Be great if we had a real media in this country rather than a Pravda or Al Jazeera like we do. That's the scandal that's being exposed. And everybody involved in it should be investigated. How does it that Attorney General Merrick Garland has yet to be investigated, or his Deputy Attorney General, or the former head of the Criminal Division or the Public Integrity Section, or Jack Smith, How is it that they escape scrutiny? They better not. For the sake of this republic, justice, and the rule of law.
There you go. There you have it. Mark Levin, the OG, saying to Americans that this is a republic, because a lot of people say it's democracy. It's actually a republic. So shout out to Mark Levin for giving us the true fact of what America truly is. Here we go.
Joining us now to expand is editor-in-chief of Racket News. You get him on Substack and everywhere else. His podcast is great. Matt Taibbi. Matt, I'm not saying they should be so nice to Trump. He doesn't walk on water. But can we expect some fairness the second time around?
No, absolutely not. I mean, one of the problems is that the press has covered Trump in a way that has left them no ability to cover him objectively without admitting massive previous failures and corruption, specifically with all of the stuff that's come out about Russiagate and some other scandals.
Yeah, let's talk about Russiagate. You said in your latest column on Racket News, you said you were reluctant to dive into the so-called conspiracy. What changed for you? Was it something in the Durham Annex and the whistleblowers over the last week?
Yeah, I mean, I've been covering this story for 8 years, and I started out just saying something seemed wrong with the reporting, like the sourcing was bad. And I thought it was a story about a thin investigation that wasn't supported well enough. And I was very reluctant to go to this place that this was a conspiracy to cover up something that Hillary Clinton had done. But the Durham report really leaves no doubt anymore that the Clinton campaign had a plan in place to blame Trump on with something related to Russia even before the WikiLeaks stuff came out. So the administration that the investigation that followed was just incidental, and that's pretty well demonstrated by what happened in the report.
And the thing is, now you have this guy Leonardo Bernardo, a name with George Soros's Open Society. Jeff Goldstein, dealing with Debbie Wasserman Schultz, back and forth and finding a way to change the narrative from Hillary's emails and the John Podesta hacking to Donald Trump in bed with Vladimir Putin to hopefully win the election and later to destroy his first term when he won.
Yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable because the real story here is that Hillary Clinton's use of a private email server opened up the United States to an unprecedented security risk. And the Russian government actually came into possession of a huge cache of material, correspondence all the way up to the president's office. And yet, in order to deflect from that, they had to create some kind of story that was similarly explosive. So they came up with this idea of linking and vilifying Trump and Putin together. They talked about it being a long-term project to demonize them both. And that's what they did. And what's so remarkable is that every single major media reporter in America went along with this, this station excluded, obviously.
Matt, if it wasn't for a compliant media, it wouldn't have worked. It would have been a bunch of intelligence officials making statements. But the media was stenographers for this story. And it ruins people's lives. Michael Flynn, Paul Manafort, solitary confinement. They almost arrested Jared Kushner. This goes all the way through, but a lot of people are saying we've been through this. What's different is in this annex, in these burn bags that were found in the FBI. But the New York Times on Friday comes out and just show this headline, because you tackle this in your column. They basically say, could it be that the information that Matt Taibbi and Brian Kilmeade are talking about right now is Russian disinformation, and it wasn't them? So if you could stay with this, can you buy that? Do you think the Russians are duping us?
No, there's no question that they had an enormous amount of material. It was taken seriously enough by James Comey that he moved up the date of his announcement of the end of Hillary Clinton's email investigation. And the denials that the New York Times is writing about today, and I'm just so exhausted by this process, Brian.
I know.
Every time they come out with some new cockamamie thing, and we have to take time to knock it all down again, and eventually it's admitted later. But these are non-denial denials. They talk about it being put together by spies, and the people who are mentioned in the story, they say they don't recall it happening. But if you actually look at what they say in these interviews, they say things like, yeah, I don't remember doing that, but it's possible that I proposed that kind of plan. And it's possible that if I proposed it, it would have been accepted by the campaign. It's embarrassing.
Lastly, in the conclusion, people want to see some type of consequences for this unsavory action. If we talk about consequences, note there's a statute of limitations. What do you expect?
Well, I don't know. I think that's the last remaining mystery in all this. I know from talking to people who are close to all these investigations that they're not doing this as part of any kind of hearts and minds campaign. They don't expect that the press is going to suddenly stop on a dime and make their case to the American people. They're doing this for a reason, and they're doing it to make cases that we know that there are criminal referrals that have been made, investigations have been started. We just don't know exactly what they're going to charge. It's going to be some kind of conspiracy case, but conspiracy to do what exactly isn't clear. But the evidence is abundant, and they've completely exploited the myth of Russiagate at this point.
And if people want to know the latest, just cut through it all, follow Matt Taibbi on Substack on Racket News. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it.
There you have it. Russia hoax is definitely blowing up right now. Here we go.
More than 50 Texas Democrats fleeing the Lone Star State for Chicago, all to protest Republican efforts to redistrict the state ahead of the midterms. Texas Governor Greg Abbott announcing late last night that the Dems who fled could be removed, writing, quote, Democrats hatched a deliberate plan not to show up for work for the specific purpose of abdicating their duties and of their office and thwarting the chamber's business. That amounts to an abandonment or forfeiture of an elected state office. RNC National Committee woman Jane Timken joins me now. Jane, could they actually be kicked out, deemed to have forfeited their seats?
I mean, it's quite possible. This never ends well for the Democrats. This is another shenanigan they're trying to pull. And to hightail it out to Chicago, I know it's hot in Texas, but they got to get back to work.
For all the bloviating from these Texas Democrats, don't California, New York, all blue states do the exact same thing to benefit Dems when they have control of the state house?
Absolutely. They do this all the time. And we see it, as you said, in New York and California. This is Eric Holder's plan, Obama's former attorney general. They have been determined to redistrict themselves into power for quite some time. And Republicans should stand strong and not put up with this nonsense. Democrats need to do their job, unless they don't want to do it anymore, and then they can lose their job.
An interesting part of all this, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, very, very vocal recently, could be vulnerable because of this redistricting. And as you might imagine, she is not happy about it. Let's listen.
I do think it's important for us to have the conversation around the fact that this is bigger than Texas. This isn't just about the 5 seats in Texas. This is about a power grab. It is about basically setting the tone for what Donald Trump will try to do throughout this country so that he can suppress the voices of black and brown folk just so that he can stay in power. We've got to do everything that we can to save this country, because right now it feels like we're going to hell, and it doesn't seem like we have a way back.
Okay, so you heard in her answer, she's making this about race, yet 4 of the 5 new districts that would be created by this Texas Republican plan literally are majority Hispanic. That according to the author of the bill pushing these maps. Your thoughts, Jane?
Well, of course they're going to push the race card. This is really not about race. It's about making districts that are fair. We've seen that the Democrats have abused the system in other states. Republicans should stand strong. Districts are redrawn all the time because of population changes. I'm sure that Jasmine Crockett is worried about her job, but I'm sure she'll find another one.
Meantime, Democrats stuck between a rock and a hard place, some leaning toward far left leaders and others trying to recruit military veterans to run for office. Sort of a two-parter here. Do you think they can even get military veterans to run when the party has gone so far left, supporting people like Zohran Mamdani? And if they ultimately are able to be successful getting those individuals to run, do you think it will work? Will they be able to win the midterms by going veteran?
Well, look, I appreciate all the men and women who serve our country. But the problem is that the Democrats' brand is so damaged. We see their approval rating at record lows. And the reality is, I think the American people have woken up and seen what the Democrats have been up to. And their agenda is quite frankly, anti-American. They're the party that's out there championing burning the flag with rampant anti-Semitism. Which Americans have rejected. The Republican Party is about the working class, the blue collar men and women, safe and secure borders. You saw what happened with the passage of the One Big Beautiful Bill. This is championing America and American workers and American taxpayers. Democrats really have no cohesive message. And as I said, I appreciate the servicemen and women who want to stand up, but they are in the wrong brand.
Jane Timken, thank you for your time this morning. We appreciate it.
I'm Steve. There you have it. More Jasmine Crockett.
More than 50 members of the Texas House of Representatives fleeing to Chicago in protest of Republican efforts to redistrict the Lone Star State ahead of the midterm elections. And Democrats are having a field day with the proposed changes.
We've got to do things that perhaps in the past I would not have supported. This is an authoritarian move by the White House to try to make sure that they can rig the election.
If Republicans were confident on their policy agenda, they'd be eager to defend it with the people and to defend it at the ballot box next November, but they know they're in trouble. And so they're trying to rig the system to hold on to power next November.
Democracy itself, freedom itself are at stake here, and we cannot allow for an Orban-style one-party system takeover of our entire government. So we've got to do whatever we can to fight back.
All right, let's bring in Fox News contributor Mary Catherine Ham. Mary Catherine, great to see you. Democrats appear to be very bothered by this. What say you?
This is so embarrassing. Just go and do your jobs in the House that you were elected to. Look, this happens every now and then where Republicans basically do the playbook that Democrats have been running for a while, and then Democrats go, wait, you're not supposed to do that. Only we're supposed to do that. Now we're going to leave our elected state and evade the democratic process in order to thwart you using these tools that are at your disposal. Even the New York Times reported or admitted that Democrats have little to fight back with on the gerrymandering front because they have gerrymandered their states so extensively, Chicago being a great example, Illinois being a great example, which is where they fled, that they can't actually do anything to compete against this. So I would just say that this is once again a bit of a tantrum, and the people who they represent should require them to be in their state to do their jobs.
Yeah. Speaking of Illinois, the governor, J.B. Pritzker, never seizing an opportunity or not seizing an opportunity to grab the spotlight. He took to the microphone and said Republicans are cheating.
Mm-hmm. They are attempting to cheat. And, I think we all know Donald Trump is a cheater. When the cult leader and, would-be dictator of the United States tells Texas to midstream change the game, when they know that they're going to lose in 2026, all bets are off. Everything's got to be on the table.
There it is again. We've got to fight back, Governor Pritzker says.
Yeah, this is how they justify everything. And I actually think it does get undemocratic when you decide that you can justify anything you do because your opposition has been a special kind of dangerous. And this is what they've done with the Trump era from day one, right? This is what got you Russiagate, is that all of these intelligence officials and officials and democratically elected officials were like, this guy is a special danger, and because he's a special danger, we can do special FISA warrants that violate a bunch of Americans' rights. That was a bad thing to do. That was the wrong thing to do. They lead themselves down these paths. And by the way, those paths aren't always great for American voters who decide, we don't like that you're violating all the norms that you allegedly value to do this.
Mary Catherine Ham, I want to ask you about a Wall Street Journal headline. The conservative women who are having it all grabbed my attention. I'm sure it grabbed yours as well. Here's a quote from the Wall Street Journal piece on that. There's Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett, former South Carolina governor and ambassador to the UN Nikki Haley, and Senator Katie Britt of Alabama. Last year, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt returned to work just 4 days after giving birth when Trump announced his candidacy. I would reject that you can't be a good mom and be good at your job, Leavitt said on a recent podcast. It's not for everybody, and it takes a lot of work and will and faith and prayer, and it's hard, but it can be done. I mean, it seems there are more and more conservative women and evidence of conservative women excelling in these high-profile careers, Mary Catherine, while having a family. They're crediting their faith, as you heard from Caroline Leavitt, for their ability to maintain their grit throughout. We know this is not easy, and really seems to be flipping the idea that feminism only exists on the left. It appears it's on the right in its own way, too. Your reaction?
Yeah, I loved, by the way, that Nikki Haley was like planning her daughter's wedding while she was running for president. I enjoyed that multitasking Olympics that she was up to. No, look, there are a lot of different models for this, and I think conservative women in particular are pretty good at recognizing that motherhood and career can be compatible, but they are imperfectible. Like, this isn't going to be a perfect situation for you. There are going to be things you give up on one side or things you give up on the other side. And it looks different all throughout your kids' lives. I have 4 kids. I love doing my job and I love being a parent to them. I have given up opportunities and money to make sure that I am there for them. I have been a single widowed mother to 2 kids, and that certainly came with its own set of problems. But the sort of relying on your faith, enjoying motherhood itself, enjoying your children, and letting that give you the tools to succeed in your career, I think is something that women of the right, women of faith, are pretty good at. And now it isn't going to work for everyone. I can't do the Caroline Leavitt, right? I'm going to do a different model of that. But there are women who can do certain things, and there are others who set their lives up differently. And I think recognizing all the ways you can have it all at whatever stage of your life is an important part of making it work for you and your family.
Having spoken to so many amazing working moms right here at Fox about this over the years, best advice ever is just take it one day at a time, right?
Shout out to all the moms out there. So time to hear from the governor of Texas. Here we go.
All right, dozens of Texas Democrats leaving the state, making a last-ditch effort to block Republican plans to redraw the state's election map. New York Governor Kathy Hochul, flanked by Texas House Democrats, said this just moments ago.
This is not breaking the law. This is a legitimate process that has been used before. By breaking quorum and being here today, these legislators are getting into what John Lewis might call good trouble. Good trouble is the best kind of trouble. They've drawn racist lines to disenfranchise millions of Texans.
And Texas Governor Greg Abbott joins us now. Thank you so much. Can you tell us from your perspective, what is the issue? Why did they leave?
So they're leaving, and they've left because they're very un-Texan. Texans don't run from a fight. And there's a fight going on in the legislature right now about redistricting as well as other things. But I'll make 2 quick points, Dana, about this. For one, to run to states like New York and Illinois to protest redistricting is kind of like running to Wisconsin to protest cheese. It's just kind of outrageous. Those are New York and Illinois are 2 hallmark states that have already done redistricting to eliminate Republicans. But the second thing is far more serious. And that is what these Democrats have done. Just a small fraction of them were needed to break a quorum, and that small fraction is holding hostage legislation in the state of Texas where we will be able to provide assistance and reform for all of the victims of that horrific flooding that we've had in the state of Texas. Our fellow Texans are being let down and not getting the flood relief they need because these Democrats have absconded from the responsibility, and I believe they have forfeited their seats in the state legislature because they're not doing the job they were elected to do.
Governor, let me show everybody here what you were talking about. I think we have this map of Illinois and the districts as they've been drawn. And as you point out, it's been over and over again. They make these small little squiggly lines to make sure that they can figure out the best way to get Democrats there. So that's an example of what you were talking about. I want to play for you this sound from State Representative Gene Wu. He's a Democrat from Texas. Here's what he said.
The tool they're using is a racist, gerrymandered map. A map that seeks to use racial lines to divide hard-working communities. And Governor Abbott is doing this in submission to Donald Trump, so that Donald Trump could steal these communities' power and voice.
I have two main questions. How do you respond to his accusation that you're using a racist tool to do this? And the second question I have, if you could wrap it into this answer, is why now? Why do you need to do this in the middle of this session?
Sure. So what he just said is totally bogus. First, for redistricting purposes, it's not done for racial reasons. However, the racial outcome is this, and that is the district lines will solidify the Barbara Jordan African-American district in the Houston area, and it will add 4 new Hispanic districts. And so there's actually going to be more racial minority districts in the state of Texas. Why now? 2 reasons. One is, since we last did redistricting, there's been a change in law. A court decision affecting Texas came out and said that coalition districts are no longer required, and it's perfectly legal to dismantle coalition districts. The second is gerrymandering can be done, or drawing lines can be done, on the basis of political makeup, as in Republican versus Democrat, and there's nothing illegal about that. And then when you look at the outcome of the most recent presidential election, all these districts that are being added are districts that were won by Trump. Here's the point of that. These voters in these districts won by Trump, they don't have the ability to vote for their candidate of choice now because they're in congressional districts. They're in a Democrat district as opposed to a district won by Trump. And so we have the authority legally under redistricting law to draw districts that align with the voter preferences of the voters of the state of Texas. And Donald Trump proved in these Hispanic-created districts that Hispanics, as well as other people in those districts, they want to vote Republican.
Let me just point this out. We've seen this movie before, and we know how it ends. If you don't have the votes, eventually you come home to Texas, and we know it, basically it's going to be overtaken by events. But you also said in your statement that you put out today to all of them, in a letter to them, you said, in addition to abandoning their offices, these legislators may also have committed felonies. What is the felony? What are the penalties for this?
So very simply, it would be bribery if any lawmaker took money to perform or to refuse to perform an act in the legislature. And the reports are these legislators have been they sought money and they offered money to skip the vote, to leave the legislature, to take a legislative act. That would be bribery. And so the facts will have to come out. But I think based upon comments made by legislators themselves, they face a possibility of facing bribery charges, which is a second-degree felony in the state of Texas. There's one way to cure that, and that is if they get back to the state of Texas and make quorum today at a hearing that we have at 3 o'clock, they can cure themselves of any quid pro quo that would subject them to potential bribery charges.
All right, Governor Abbott, well, we'll be watching Martha's show, the story, at 3 o'clock Eastern to see if by the end of that show.
Governor Abbott warns Democrats of legal consequences. A lot of people are saying this man is smart, absolutely genius level lawyer. A lot of people don't know that he is actually a legal legend.
So if it's not
but
Kamala
he
Harris,
is.
who is
Here we
it?
go.
These are
Kamala
some of the young
Harris.
progressives in the party on who should lead Democrats.
Uh-oh.
I really like AOC. Unfortunately, I would like to see her stand and be more vocal about Palestine. But other than that, I really think that she should be the leader of the Democratic Party, as she is a Democratic socialist. Being also a young person, a young voter, a college student, seeing people like Zohran Mamdani, AOC just gaining so much more footing and so much more recognition in the policy field is very empowering.
I think candidates like Zohran Mamdani and AOC are really inspiring to see. They, someone like Mamdani, a Muslim like me, and Zainab here, it's so inspiring to see. And so I think that someone like that in 2028 can carry a lot of momentum. I think people are so excited.
So it goes back, Lawrence, to our point earlier about nothing's changed, no lessons learned. Right. It's resist Donald Trump and move as far left as possible in the Democrat Party. AOC and others seem to be still getting the attention.
Yeah, and that's where all of the energy is for them. Look, losing stinks. It's the worst. And when you lose, everybody's a loser. You know, you look backwards and you see Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, and they're both losers. And you start seeing them start like carping back and forth. And then you look forward and you have AOC and Mamdani and others who are part of the truly radical, crazy left-wing fringe of the party that, you know, say what you want to about somebody like Nancy Pelosi. She was very effective at keeping the fringe part of her candidate, of her party, under wraps. As she kind of rides off the sunset, Chuck Schumer is left. He doesn't know what to do. He has no ability to keep this fringe under wraps. And that's where all the energy is. That's where all the excitement is. The problem is when you get outside of the party, there isn't a broad, widespread general election support for this crazy nonsense. Full-blown communism here in New York City.
Well, you're right, Charlie. I think what this new generation of socialist Marxists, what they do very well is they diagnose the problem very well. When they talk about affordability and they say, you know, you should, the quality of health care, even what's happening in Gaza, they say the children should not be dying. Of course, they don't say Hamas is responsible for a lot of the deaths there. Many of their solutions are so jacked up, but they do a great job in telling the American people, I understand your pain. Kind of, in effect, like Donald Trump, addressing the working class, people that feel forgotten in America. His solution is different. Bill Maher has a warning for the Democrats. Okay, yeah, these young people are crafty. They are inspirational. But if you run these people, the GOP will win the next election. Watch.
Do you think that he would have the power and influence to be able to, like, usher in socialism?
He definitely has the power and influence to elect J.D. Vance or whoever is the Republican candidate next time. It is a walking commercial for the Republican Party nationally.
The Republicans are going to...
When you let the Democrat socialists, and now they're actually calling themselves socialists, when you let them take over a major American city, this is what you get.
You know, if you're engaging with a psycho who all they care about is controlling you, they're very good at diagnosing problems. Yeah. They're very good at figuring out what your weak points are. And that's, I would argue, what a lot of these people are doing. That's right. They recognize that if you can focus on these problems, then you can, use that dissatisfaction to gain power for yourself.
Right. When I see his face, I think immediately of his pitch for government-run, grocery stores.
That'll work out.
And I don't think there's any reasonable American who hears that and thinks that that's something that will work for them and their family.
But he's winning. And all of the polls right now, if you take Sliwa out of the polling, he still wins. If you take Adams out of the polling, he still wins. If you take Cuomo out of the polling, he still wins in New York City. This is supposed to be the financial capital of the world, and people are willing to elect a socialist. And, you know, I don't want him to win. I hope people wake up. But I think this will be the next mayor of New York. And the question is, what are we going to do about it?
Yeah, it'll be terrible for New York City, but Republicans will be able to run on this issue for as long as that guy's around. Yeah. And it's going to be a huge boon for Republicans and conservatives around the country, and New York City is going to pay the...
I will say this finally, when it comes to Bill Maher, it is so refreshing to see, once you remove the TDS, the Trump derangements, how you're able to look at the landscape and think logically. Bill Maher is still liberal. He's still a Democrat at heart. But he looks at the deck much differently now that he's met the president. He sees what's happening in the country. The liberals can recover. They can find some type of candidate, but they got to stop focusing on Donald Trump. Yeah. You can't look at every single issue and look at the president. You got to have your own policy prescriptions. And so now he's warning them, guys, if you do this, you may get a temporary sugar high because this is this crazy leftist, but you can't run a candidate like that nationally. People don't like you taking their money.
Yeah.
This is still America.
If Bill Maher can see it, it must be obvious.
Yep.
Bill Maher, everybody knows he's definitely a liberal, but he has common sense. I tell you that much. All right, here we go. This right here, of course, happened in a state in the United States, a Democrat-run state, and it's been an alarming issue where they had to raise money for this lady. But
Democrat comedian Bill Maher warning the party about their
was
own
heavy.
demise if they give socialist Zohran Mamdani a victory.
Do you think that he would have the power and influence to be able to, like, usher in socialism?
He definitely has the power and influence to elect J.D. Vance or whoever is the Republican candidate next time. It is a walking commercial for the Republican Party
I think
nationally.
the Republicans are going to.
When
The
you
Republicans.
let the Democrat socialists, and now they're actually calling themselves socialists, when you let them
but you
take
look at-
over a major American city, this is what you get.
Our next guest agrees and has a plan for New Yorkers looking to escape the Big Apple, telling them the Buckeye State is waiting for you. Ohio gubernatorial candidate Vivek Ramaswamy joins us now. Good morning, Vivek.
Good morning.
Yeah, so the Democrats have a problem. They have these.
Now, Vivek, this is one of the guys that I actually thought that would have a major role in the Trump administration, but for some reason he didn't have a major role in the Trump administration. But he's going for Ohio governor seat, so let's see how that works out for him. But I thought it was going to have something tangible in the Trump administration, but for some reason, I guess not.
Young, inspirational candidates that diagnose a lot of the problems very well, but their solutions are asinine and anti-American.
Well, look, I think the key answer right now is it about socialism or capitalism? That's the choice. It's a fork in the road for the future of the country. And it's not just about one candidate in New York who represents the socialism wing. You look at the rise of Fateh in Minneapolis. They call him the Mamdani of Minneapolis. You see trends coming up across the country. There's a deep fissure in the Democratic Party where there, a lot of their bases, unfortunately, is in electing socialism over capitalism. Now, my advice to Republicans across the country is this is our chance to actually offer an alternative vision, to make the case for why free enterprise, why capitalism is the best system known to the history of man to lift people up from poverty, to stand for common sense, opposing the defund the police movements that have resulted in a violent wave of crime across our cities, including even in my own home state of Ohio. This is a special opportunity for us as Republicans to really show not just what we're against, but what do we actually stand for? And if we nail that, the contrast could not be more evident for the next decade in our country.
But Vivek, it has to be two-pronged. Yes, some people will move to Ohio, move to my home state of Texas. But there are some people, they can't move. And so the offer has to be in different states, different cities. But you also need Republicans and conservatives fighting where the war is happening, like in New York. There has to be an alternative message there too, right?
Absolutely. I mean, look, it's personal to me. I was born and raised in Cincinnati. I live in central Ohio today and running for governor here. But I lived a decade of my life in Manhattan. It is one of America's great cities, is New York City. We can't watch the great cities and from New York to California flounder if we're going to be one nation still pursuing a leadership position, a shining city on a hill for the world. New York City is an important part of that. So I do hope a lot of New Yorkers wake up even for the sake of New York. Now that exodus, that ability to freely travel, to move to other states, is something that holds states like New York and California accountable as well. It's what our founders envisioned. That's what federalism is all about. But I do think a lot of people in New York are going to unfortunately wake up to the effects of socialism. The well-intentioned so-called solutions to a housing crisis are actually going to make that very affordable crisis worse for the people they were supposedly trying to help. I don't want to see that play out over the next 10 years. I think Republicans have an important role to play, Lawrence. And I mean this for the Republican Party. The Democrats have their own loss in the wilderness to figure out. But for the Republican Party, the question is, are we offering an alternative vision that we actually stand for when it comes to fighting crime, when it comes to not only lower taxes, but improving affordability for everyday working Americans? And if we do that, that's our part that's actually going to help save the country. That's where we've got to be focused from New York to Ohio to California.
So let's talk about that alternative vision, because you're born and raised in Cincinnati, Ohio. One of the victims there said that she suffered traumatic
Now, we saw what happened in Cincinnati. The lady right there, she got really, I would just say, destroyed by a man. He punched her, which is just out of this world. But she now has GoFundMe, and a lot of people are donating to her GoFundMe. The last time that I saw her GoFundMe, she had over $100,000 in there, and that's good, really good, because this is proof that good people and good-hearted people are still amongst us.
Brain injury is there. We all saw the video of what took place there. More facts are emerging about that case. But you're doing a town hall because there was that situation, but there's an overall violent problem in Cincinnati. What do you think this town hall is going to resolve?
So look, I got to tell you, after that incident a little over a week ago, and I got to say I spoke to that victim, Holly, several times, including as recently as yesterday. I'm grateful she's gradually recovering. But this is not about that one incident. This is about a pattern of really people feeling fearful of entering their city. And again, it hits home to me because Cincinnati is my hometown. To see Cincinnati in the national news in that light really hurts. And I think we need a change in leadership at the top, including the tone that we set even from our state, to be able to say we're not tolerating this kind of violent crime. This isn't a Democrat versus Republican issue, Lawrence. This is about common sense. Too many Americans and too many people in Cincinnati don't even feel safe to go into their own home city. I don't think sweeping these issues under the rug is a solution. A lot of people would have preferred me to just continue to move on. I say, no, we got to talk about it in the open, because this issue of urban crime, it is politically incorrect in some circles. I don't care about political correctness. What we're going to do is we're going to go to the city of Cincinnati. We're going to be there tonight at 5:30 p.m. We're inviting residents from across the spectrum. I don't care whether you politically agree with me or not. Let's talk about in the open, how are we addressing this wave of violent crime in our cities across the country, including right here at home in Cincinnati. We want solutions. And I don't care if you're a Democrat, independent, or anything else. If you're committed to fighting violent crime in Cincinnati, if you're committed to making sure Cincinnatians feel safe in their city, we're going to be on the same team tonight. It's a bit of an experiment. We'll see how it goes. But in my experience, the open dialogue has usually worked well to bring people together. That's what we're going to try to do tonight.
Well, it's the right message, because you're actually going to the heart of the problem. And Republicans can't win unless they go there and fight for the ideas, offer a different solution than what the other side is proposing. Vivek, good luck in your race. We'll be following it.
Hopefully, Vivek wins Ohio governor seat. He's a very special, brilliant man. All right, Russia.
Well, President Trump confirming the deployment of 2 nuclear submarines in response to escalating tensions between the United States and Russia. Here's what the president said last night.
On Russia, Mr. President, can you say, have those nuclear submarines been deployed yet to face Russia?
I've already put out a statement, and the answer is they are in the region, where they have to be.
General Jack Keane is joining us now. General, I was looking forward to hearing from you all weekend as this was developing, to find out what you think about all of this.
Well, Putin, in this case, Medvedev, who's his deputy chairman of his Security Council, he was a stand-in president for him during 2008 to 2012, and he uses him kind of as a spokesperson to express his views. And what Medvedev did here to precipitate the president's actions, it once again brandished the threat of nuclear weapons use. And believe me, this is a part of their instrument of national power. They use psychological warfare, is how I would describe it. And they were quite successful in the Biden administration, because as a result of threatening the use of tactical nuclear weapons, Biden restricted the use of our weapons. He held them back, long-range missiles, tanks, F-16s, to name a few. The Europeans were onto it, and they realized that this was a bluff, and we should stop submitting to that bluff and changing our behavior. And they forced the Biden administration to provide those items I just suggested. The Europeans, that is, because they were, in a sense, calling the Russians bluff. The president has heard this, and he wants them to know unequivocally that he's in charge here. He's not going to submit to this kind of intimidation and coercion and psychological warfare. And that is the message he is sending by announcing the deployment of 2 nuclear-powered submarines. By the way, all of our submarines are nuclear-powered. 14 of them carry nuclear ballistic missiles as part of our strategic triad arsenal. So yes, this is much as it's about messaging more than anything else, Dana and Martha, and it's by the president. I am not going to submit to this kind of intimidation.
There was also an exchange last night between President Trump and a reporter about Russia and how they might be able to avoid sanctions. Watch it.
Did you say what Steve Witkoff's message will be to the Russians? Is there anything they can do to avoid sanctions at this point?
Yeah, get a deal where people stop getting killed. We stopped a lot of wars. This is the one we seem to be, this should be the easiest to stop, and it's not.
And Zelensky out of Ukraine, his top advisor talked about this, and he said that the economy geared for war cannot withstand the pressure and is holding on only through the sale of energy resources. It is possible to strangle the Russian economy with secondary tariffs proposed in the USA. Obviously, President Trump will make his own decision on that, but do you think that that could help? Because President Putin seems to be able to withstand a lot of pain. If his people are hurting, it doesn't seem to bother him that much.
Yeah, well, certainly he's always been able to work around sanctions. He's not all that intimidated about them. But the combination of tariffs and sanctions, and the kind of sanctions we're talking about here, is really going after the major buyers of Russian oil. And that we know for a fact that Russia is a one commodity economy, oil and gas. And you go after China, India, Venezuela, Brazil, other countries that are purchasing this oil. It will definitely have some impact. It won't have an immediate impact, but it will have impact. And their economy is already struggling with very, very high inflation, devaluation of the ruble. The Russian people, though, overwhelmingly, the majority of them still support this war despite 41 months. And it has to do with how Putin characterizes it. He's talking about the United States and the West encroaching on Russia, wanting to deny Russia their sovereignty and their ability to exist as a nation. That's how he portrays this war on state television, day in and day out, day in and day out. And he avoids getting conscripts or new recruits from the western part of Russia. He gets them from central and eastern Russia. And if there is a death as a result of one of these soldiers being killed, they pay them the equivalent of $150,000, which is really quite stunning, given the Russian economy. So the people are still supporting Putin. Putin knows that. And the reality is here, these sanctions will take its toll on the people and the economy once they're enforced.
All right, so much happening, and it's another Monday that we start off with you, and we appreciate it.
Wonder why this is going on with Russia for this long. It's been going on for, like you heard, 41 months. It's time to end this unnecessary situation in Russia versus Ukraine. And I believe that God has put President Trump in the Oval Office to end this nonsense. All right, here we go.
And a Fox News alert, Democrats in revolt. State lawmakers are fleeing Texas as part of an effort to block Republicans from redrawing the state's congressional map. Good morning, I'm Dana Perino. Bill Hemmer is on assignment. Martha is here with me.
And that brings me in. Good morning, everybody. How you doing, Dana? Good to be with you. I'm Martha McCallum, and this is America's Newsroom. Great to have you with us this morning. So some Texas Democrats decamping to Chicago, and that's where you saw Governor Pritzker. He's there backing them all up. Others went to Boston, some went to New York. They're basically fleeing the state so that they can deny Republicans in the state a quorum, and that means the State House won't have enough people present to get their business through.
So all this is drawing a very angry response from Governor Greg Abbott. He says if Democrats don't come back this afternoon, well, then he's going to try to just oust them from office. Democrats, they are not budging, however.
We come here today with absolute moral clarity that this is absolutely the right thing to do to protect the people of the state of Texas.
We have a problem. The largest democracy in the world, and yet a Texas governor would bend a knee to Donald Trump because he's afraid to lose an election.
We will not let power go unchecked.
Right.
Or let your voices and their voices go unheard.
Garrett Tenney joins us live from Chicago. Hi, Garrett.
Martha, good morning to you. The Texas State Legislature was scheduled to vote on those new proposed congressional maps this afternoon, but those votes obviously cannot happen now that dozens of state Democratic lawmakers have fled to other states. They are taking up sanctuary in blue states, such as here in Illinois, saying they will be here as long as it takes to keep the Republican-controlled legislature from pushing through a map that's designed to give the GOP as many as 5 additional congressional seats ahead of next year's midterm elections.
All the things that we are doing right now, we're doing it because we feel that this is the only way we can protect Texans. This is the only way we can protect Americans.
Those Texas lawmakers are now facing a $500 fine for every day they are not at the Capitol. And Texas Governor Greg Abbott says he is going to use every tool available to force them back, including potentially trying to remove them from office. In a statement, he says, in part, the abscond Democrat House members were elected to meet and vote on legislation, not to prevent votes that may not go their way. This truancy ends now. This redistricting fight is also supercharging a national arms race for other states to do this as well, including here in Illinois, which is arguably even more gerrymandered than the one Democrats are denouncing in Texas. Here's Governor J.B. Pritzker overnight.
But let me be clear that they are attempting to cheat. And, I think we all know Donald Trump is a cheater.
All right. Breaking news. I just got it right here. It says here that Governor Greg Abbott has just ordered the arrest of delinquent Texas House Democrat because they were not, of course, present. So there's been an order of arrest for AWOL Texas House Democrat after warrants issued by House Speaker. This is going wild. Here we go.
Remember, all bets are off when the cult leader and, would-be dictator of the United States tells Texas to midstream change the game when they know that they're going to lose in 2026. All bets are off. Everything's got to be on the table.
This strategy is not new for Texas Democrats. You may remember 4 years ago, they left town to Washington, D.C. over a voting bill that was stalled for more than a month before they had arrest warrants issued, and it eventually passed. Martha?
All right. Thank you, Garrett.
So let's bring in Mark Thiessen, a Fox News contributor, and Jasmine Crockett. She's a congressional member now, Democrat. She was asked about this over the weekend. Listen here.
Are you concerned that repeated walkouts could backfire politically, painting Democrats as obstructionists rather than standing up for voting rights?
Absolutely not. There are so many people that feel like the Democrats have not been fighting hard enough. Well, I am here to tell you, as you've already stated, I have been a loud voice of opposition to this regime thus far. We have some of the best fighters that you can find right there in the state of Texas.
Mark, I could have fallen asleep, woke up and said, this is the same exact thing that happened several years ago. They don't have the votes. We know how, the three of us, and now our viewers know how this is going to end. But the Democrats seem not to understand that.
Well, what's funny about what she just said is they got the best fighters right there in Texas. Actually, they're in Illinois. They're not in Texas. And what I love about this story is that you've got Democrats fleeing to Illinois when the people of Illinois are fleeing to Texas. Illinois is third in the country for population loss behind New York and California. 600,000 people over the last decade have left Illinois because of their disastrous blue state policies. One statistic from an Illinois Public Policy Group found that Illinois loses a resident every 9 minutes and 21 seconds. And the only reason they haven't had a net population loss is because they've got to take in 100,000 illegal migrants. So Illinois is replacing American citizens who are fleeing the state with illegal migrants who are coming in. And the Texas legislators are going there to fight against the policies of the state that everybody is going to.
So, Mark, this doesn't usually happen mid-decade. So it's an unusual timing in this instance. And there is some suggestion that it could backfire in some places against some Republican areas. What are your thoughts on the strategy of this, the political strategy of this for Republicans?
Well, first of all, the reason Texas is doing this is because so many people have moved into the country into the state so quickly. Last year, Texas passed Florida as the #1 destination for in-migration. Their population, they took in 133,000 net increase in population. They just surpassed 30 million people. So when you've got so many people fleeing into the state, then you've got to redraw the districts to reflect the population gains. And so I think that's one of the reasons why they're doing it. But what's interesting about this is that going forward, this whole population and migration thing is going to completely change the political map, because states like Texas and Florida and these red states are gaining massive numbers of population, and that means after the 2030 census, there's going to be a migration of congressional seats and electoral votes away from the blue wall states. So Trump won the presidency by breaking the Democrats' blue wall. After 2030, if Democrats win the blue wall, they still won't have enough votes to win the presidency, because electoral votes are going to shift to Texas, they're going to shift to Florida, they're going to shift to the South, away from these disastrous blue states. And so this is a major tectonic shift that's taking place in American politics, and this is just a rumbling of that.
So interesting.
California is threatening to do the same, but to try to have more Democratic districts. So we'll watch how it all plays.
This is about to be a big deal for sure, because CNN is going to spin it around and say, well, here we go. It's about a dictatorship, or some of these leaders are being authoritarian, like the commander-in-chief. That's what they're going to say. Okay, they're going to say, well, Texas governor is being an authoritarian. Okay, here we go.
In focus now, Tennessee Republican Senator Marsha Blackburn. Senator, this seems to be happening on a regular basis. And I'm curious, I mean, many of these people don't even have driver's licenses who are here illegally. But we're certainly not making sure that they're driving sober and that they have all the rules of the road and all that. I mean, we're fighting a storm without an umbrella.
And Harris, if you were with me in Tennessee and visiting with our county sheriffs, you would hear them talk about the increase in DUIs and their concern. But as you and I have talked many times, every town's a border town, every state a border state, because of Joe Biden, his open border policy, these sanctuary city mayors and sanctuary state governors who have this policy which actually has no compassion for citizens who were harmed by those criminal illegal aliens. And thank goodness for President Donald Trump and Secretary Noem and Tom Homan, who are deporting these criminal illegal aliens. And these local law enforcement officers need to be working with ICE, so that we remove people who are a public safety risk from the country.
Well, Democrat Senator Alex Padilla facing some heat for this framing of the issue of illegal immigration. Watch.
My focus has been on the people who have been here, millions of long-term residents of the United States who happen to be undocumented, that have been the target of this administration's increasingly aggressive and cruel arrest, detention, and deportation policies. If, and this is important to emphasize, they were truly only going after the dangerous, violent criminals they so often talk about, there would be no debate, there would be no discussion.
You know what's so odd to me about Democrats on that part of the issue? Tom Homan, border czar, and others have said this from DHS. If you look at the list of how many people are being deported, over 60% of them need to leave immediately. They're on final orders. Then you have those on expedited orders. I don't understand why they make something so untrue part of the conversation, except for it's like an emotional flex.
You're right about that. And when you're talking about these individuals that entered the country, first of all, that is a crime. You cannot illegally enter the United States. So let's set that aside. And then you have these other people who are criminal illegal aliens. But yet you have some Democrats who are carrying out this violence, the uptick against ICE officers, the sit-ins, the storming of ICE headquarters. Harris, President Donald Trump said, "You elect me, I will secure the border." He has done that.
Yeah.
You elect me, we will deport these criminal illegal aliens. He has done that. Crime, violent crime is down in our cities. This is what the American people wanted to see. And Democrats who were speaking out against this are speaking out against what the majority of the American people wanted to see happen. Every time I meet with an angel parent, I just wrap my arms around them. I mean, it is heartbreaking to me that these crimes are taking place, these lives are being lost because of people who illegally entered, committed crimes, have been allowed to stay because of these sanctuary city policies.
Yeah, and getting them out of those sanctuary cities is like fighting a war at this point. I mean, because there's so much politics on the left. By the way, when Obama did this, they were okay with it on the left. He did this to the tune of millions. Amazing. But it's much more dangerous now because not that many had come in. Now we're dealing with so many more. Senator, thank you very much for your time.
All right. CNN poll.
Things are looking pretty bleak for members of the Democratic Party. More than 1 of 3 Democrats have a pretty negative perspective on their own party in 2025. These are some of the characterizations that left-leaning voters use to describe their party: weak, broken, ineffective, dishonest, corrupt, out of touch, pretty harsh. And take it from CNN's Harry Ensign, who could not help but praise President Trump.
I can't think of a more influential president during this century, and it starts here with tariffs. He said he was going to raise tariffs, and despite the claims otherwise, he is in fact doing that. Trump, at least in my mind, is the most influential president, certainly this century, and probably dating a good back chunk into the 20th century as well. Executive orders, immigration with net migration, and we're talking about tariffs and the effective tariff rate. Donald Trump is remaking the United States. Love it, like it, or lump it. He has been tremendously influential to a historic degree.
And he did not stop there, saying that the Democratic brand is in the gutter.
At this particular point, the Democratic brand is in the basement. It is total and complete garbage in the mind of the American public. The Democratic Party's net favorable rating, record lows in all 3. Wall Street Journal, 30 points underwater. CNN, 26 points underwater. Gallup, 26 points underwater. And that is being driven in large part by discontent within the Democratic base. The Democratic base wants something different.
He's exceedingly entertaining. He's really fun to watch, and it's fun to see some of the back and forth too that he gets from some of the anchors over there. What do you make of those numbers that he's laying out there?
Numbers are terrific. I've seen similar numbers. I know he's on the right track. It is interesting going back 4 years, 8 years, even 10 or 12 years. Trump has remade the political map on immigration, very important, on tariffs, protecting American jobs, most underrated issue. We could talk more about that if you want, but a lot of people see tariffs as protecting jobs, immigrants, illegals taking their jobs away. And the last point, which Etten didn't mention, is the whole issue of woke. Woke and DEI and trans, men playing in women's basketball. These were such big issues in the election last year, and they're staying. Trump's remaining on the warpath, and that's one of the reasons he's doing great. Democrats don't know how to respond to it. They just don't know how to respond to it. And now Sydney Sweeney comes along, and that makes it even worse.
That's your favorite topic today. Keep bringing it up.
Just saying.
Kennedy, your thoughts on this? Because he's been very entertaining when he lays out these numbers, and here we are heading into the midterms, and the Democrats are going to have to work to figure something out.
Yeah, it's like throwing water on a gremlin. I knew you would get that. Yes. So he says, this is the most transformative president in this century. And you can just see the people on the CNN panel no! It's acid to their ears. They're it burns, make it go away. And they can't. That's the problem. Because all they've been running against is Trump is a fascist. Trump is literally Hitler. And it's show me some ideas. That's all voters are asking for, and they absolutely can't because they're still enmeshed in this civil war.
And every time they think they've broken away from the progressives, along comes someone like Zoran Mamdani and takes the party back to the leftist gutter. And it is the worst place to be. And they will never be able to govern mainstream from there because there are too many voters in this country who've been subjected to socialism and the ills of it from either where they came from or their parents or grandparents, and they know how bad it can be.
Yeah.
Younger voters have yet to realize that. Hopefully they stay home.
You know, some of the most brutal part of that was the list that Democrats, how they feel about their own party, corrupt, dishonest. I mean, that is brutal. And that is so often what they claim about Republicans.
Right, and I thought apathetic was also quite telling, because remember in the primaries in Iowa when 80+% of those voting for Donald Trump said he fights for people like me. It's the distinct difference where in the Democrat Party you are included as long as you check a box, and if you dare to think creatively or differently, you are discarded, you are excommunicated. There are those that scoff at these polls and say, well, you know, I don't listen to polls, but trends matter. And again, in every minority group, in every coveted voting class for the most part, it rose double digits for President Trump, voting for him or trending in that direction. So the Democrat Party has an exodus on their hands. And the fact that they continue to ignore it, save Enton and Carville, who is also saying the same things, if they continue playing this tired rule of the shock at this and what are you talking about, continuing to ostrich their head in the sand about it, well, then they too will be shocked at midterms and every presidential election.
Yeah, I mean, Emily's point is basically the kind of a brutal baseline where we are, where the Democratic Party is.
Absolutely. It's an opportunity for Republicans. And I always have liked where President Trump is on clarity when it comes to this one issue. He has friends everywhere. He makes sure that he's connected to everybody. It has always been that way, even before he was president. For people who had interviewed him, they would say, oh, my gosh, you know, he could run for president, Oprah, all those years ago. He could. And the reason was because he really understood that you kind of need to know a little bit about everybody. And so Republicans right now having some kind of way to come together, and you're seeing it a little bit on the Hill with certain issues with moderate Democrats, is kind of important because it really puts Democrats in such a bind. It'll be easier to beat them no matter when they run because they are so divided. And if you have any kind of relationship with the people who want to have a relationship with you back as moderates, but we have to see, are they going to lean toward the Mamdanis and the Fatahs, the Midwest Mamdani in Minneapolis just to win and then hope that they can get their party away from the hands of the far left communists? Are they going to fall for that?
No, that's what's happened here, and Democrat leadership doesn't seem to understand it, because they pulled so far to the left for all the reasons that you all are talking about, because Trump is ringing the bell on immigration and China and cultural issues that really affect people. Trump is now the centrist.
That's right.
He occupies the whole center. A little bit of left.
Ladies and gentlemen, I got to read this to you. I got to read this from the commander-in-chief, of course. It says, Sydney Sweeney, a registered Republican, has the hottest ad out there. It's for American Eagle, and the jeans are flying off the shelves. Go get 'em, Sydney. And then the next slide says, just look at woke singer Taylor Swift. Ever since I alerted the world as to what she was, the tide has seriously turned. Being woke is for losers. Being Republican is what you want to be. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Oh, man.
Left of center, more right of center. But he's where, for example, 30 years ago, he's where Bill Clinton was, okay? And Democrats are too stupid right now to go in and do what Bill Clinton did. So Trump has just occupied that, and they can't get it. They can't get there. They're too stupid. No, they're too dumb to do it.
Regain that middle ground, but there will be more.
It's a wonderful place to be. The entire center is Donald Trump. Sorry.
More outnumbered next.
Just say it.
All right, here we go.
Massachusetts has a horrible gerrymander. Republicans there typically get 35 to 40% of the vote, sometimes even more. They don't have a single member of Congress. And Illinois' congressional map, I would compare to the scribblings of a small child, but it would be unfair to small children. It is a horrific gerrymander. So it's rich the Democrats have fled Texas to these deeply Democratic states.
Well, that was Senator Tom Cotton here on America Reports with us last hour on the irony of the redistricting battle in Texas. Democrat state lawmakers have fled the state to try and block Republicans from redrawing the congressional map. That led to an ultimatum from the governor.
They face a possibility of facing bribery charges, which is a second-degree felony in the state of Texas. There's one way to cure that, and that is if they get back to the state of Texas and make quorum today at a hearing that we have at 3 o'clock, they can cure themselves of any quid pro quo that would subject them to potential bribery charges.
Let's bring in Jonathan Turley, Fox News contributor, constitutional law attorney, and professor at the George Washington University. Professor, welcome to you. Good to see you. So what tools does the governor and the state have at their disposal to get these Democrats back?
Well, Democrats have used this tactic in the past. Actually, it was not successful the last time. And it's the sort of legislative equivalent of a child holding his breath until his parents yield to his demands. You're more likely to pass out than prevail. And that is the same as in this circumstance. The governor can call more special sessions. So it's unlikely the Democrats are going to be able to keep this up long enough. They're trying to run out the clock. Now, what the governor is referring to is itself a difficult process. One of the things that he has suggested is that the Attorney General of Texas can argue that these legislators have abandoned their office. Now, to do that, you've got to go to court, and the judge has to say, yeah, this office is now vacant because of their actions. That's a really tough argument to make, but it is possible, but it takes time. That's what the Democrats are hoping for. They need 100 of 150 members to make a quorum. That's why roughly 50 have fled to these Democratic strongholds. Now, when he refers to bribery, he's saying, look, we're going to hit you with very high fines, and you cannot get other people to pay those fines, and you can't accept money during this flight, and I'm going to argue that that is bribery. Once again, that takes a lot of time. So this is a standoff that ultimately the governor is likely to win, but there's no good options here for either side, in my view.
Greg Abbott, in his own words, describing why Republicans are doing what they're doing in the state of Texas. Listen.
These voters in these districts won by Trump, they don't have the ability to vote for their candidate of choice now because they're in congressional districts. We have the authority legally under redistricting law to draw districts that align with the voter preferences of the voters of the state of Texas. And Donald Trump proved in these Hispanic-created districts that Hispanics, as well as other people in those districts, they want to vote Republican.
Yet still, the Democrats, including the DNC chair, Ken Martin, are saying that this is Donald Trump and Republicans rigging the system. His own words. Jasmine Crockett gets moved out of her own district in the redrawing, and this is Democrats ripping into this, Jonathan. Listen here.
We really didn't have a choice. This was the only way we could protect our constituents and protect the state.
Our duty is to use whatever parliamentary tools are available to us, and breaking a quorum is one of those tools, and it's the only one that will stop Trump from getting his way.
It is up to Governor Abbott if he wants to call us back. It is his choice. Does he serve Trump or does he serve the people of Texas?
Well, now I'm confused because one Democrat said we have no choice, and then the other said it's the governor's choice. But I mean, make sense of all of this. And how does this eventually end? Where does this go?
Well, Sandra, they do have a choice. It's called representing your district. It's called democracy. You can't be much of a defender of democracy and flee to prevent it from being carried out. There's a difference between denying a quorum in a meeting or a floor and fleeing the state to return to some mothership that's going to protect you. That's not part of this process. I think the governor is right about this, that this goes too far. Ultimately, the governor should be able able to hold a special session and will prevail. This has been tried in the past. It has not been successful except to delay. Keep in mind, if these Democrats are correct that these redistricting efforts are going to violate the rights of minority voters, the way that is vindicated is in the courts. You're preventing this from going to the courts. Go ahead, have everyone represent their constituencies, and have the map go forward and challenge it in court. The problem is that if this is held to be constitutional, it really is going to shred this argument. What they're trying to do here is to stop the legislative and political process. And in doing so, they're actually preventing courts from looking at the propriety, the legitimacy of these maps.
And as John Bryant, the Democrat from Texas, put it, this is the only way to stop Trump. He said it. That is their goal. Professor Turley, thank you so much for joining.
Isn't it just wild that every single thing that the Democrat wants to do is stop Trump? Everything they want to do is stop Trump. What about the people? What do you have to do for the people?
We start today's show with some big breaking news, and we're going to go straight to Fox News correspondent David Spunt for the details. David.
Well, Will, good to be with you. This is coming out of the Justice Department. Fox News can confirm that Attorney General Pam Bondi today signed an order directing an unnamed U.S. federal prosecutor to take evidence to a grand jury relating to an alleged conspiracy to tie then 2016 candidate Donald Trump to the country of Russia. Now, Fox News reviewed the one-page order just hours ago signed by the Attorney General. A source familiar with the probe confirms this as well, while a DOJ spokesperson declined to comment on this report of an investigation. Fox is told Attorney General Bondi is taking the referrals from Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, quote, very seriously. The spokesperson says that Bondi believes there is, quote, clear cause for deep concern, end quote, and a need for the next steps. Now, this move comes just a couple of weeks after the Director of National Intelligence, you see her right there, Tulsi Gabbard, sent a criminal referral to the Justice Department regarding what she says proves there was a conspiracy to undermine Trump's candidacy and later his first term in office. Now, to be clear today, there are no charges that have been filed, no indictments. This is incredibly early in the process. What we have here is taking evidence the Justice Department believes it has to a grand jury to secure an eventual indictment or indictments. We don't know exactly where the grand jury will meet. We don't know who will go before the grand jury, and that's by design, because grand juries determine if there's enough evidence to indict, and grand juries are secretive in the American legal system, so it's normal not to know all of the answers. Again, the DOJ declining on any comment regarding this investigation. But, Will, big news, this was signed by the Attorney General Pam Bondi today to take this evidence of an alleged conspiracy to a grand jury with the hope to get an indictment or multiple indictments. Will?
That is big news, David, and congratulations to you. Excellent reporting on being first on this order signed today by Attorney General Pam Bondi. I understand it is a one-page order, which you have been able to review. Fox News has been able to review. I'm afraid I'm going to ask you some questions that need to be asked, but we won't yet know the answer. So let's start with the one that everyone watching at home is interested in. Who or what names might be the target of this grand jury?
Well, that's a great point. We don't know. We know that Tulsi Gabbard, the Director of National Intelligence, has mentioned the names John Brennan, the former CIA director, James Clapper, who had the job before her. But I want to be very clear on the air. We don't know if their names are going before the grand jury. For anybody that has, talked about former President Barack Obama seeing charges, we're told by multiple law enforcement sources that's not going to happen because of the immunity that he enjoys as a former president because of the Supreme Court decision last year that came to actually benefit current President Trump. So while we don't know the names, Will, we know that those are possible names, and we know the Justice Department is serious enough and believes that it has enough evidence to take this to a grand jury. If I may just add in here, a few weeks ago, the Attorney General announced a strike force to go through some of these documents, and within a couple of weeks feels that she has enough evidence to go forward to this grand jury. So it directs an unnamed federal prosecutor to take this evidence to a grand jury, but the name of that federal prosecutor not clear at this moment.
Okay, just a couple more quick questions, David.
Sure.
Sorry to push the limits of your knowledge, but I want to make sure that we address all the things that are not only in your report, but in everyone's mind as well. The name, as well, in addition to Clapper and Brennan, that people will be wondering about will be Hillary Clinton. I understand yet we do not yet have those names. We'll be waiting to hear what names are in that referral to a grand jury. The next thing everyone will want to know, David, is what are the potential charges?
Well, the potential charges, and I want to use the word potential, would be lying to a federal official, which is a felony to do so. If you lie to an FBI agent or you lie to another federal official, there could be charges involved with there, and I'm told those could be the most likely. That's something that we saw in the John Durham investigation. He was the former special counsel that was appointed by then Attorney General Bill Barr, and those are the types of charges that he used in his cases. He actually lost both times in court, but he did secure a plea deal with a former FBI attorney for falsifying a document. So those seem to be, or that seems to be, when I say those, I should say that because that's just one charge. But that's the charge in talking to sources that people have been eyeing for weeks. But this letter, this initial letter, signed by the Attorney General that we reviewed, does not say anything about specific charges. It just directs an unnamed prosecutor, hey, you have jurisdiction that's out of your normal jurisdiction. You can go anywhere in the United States, and you could bring this evidence before a grand jury.
And a grand jury will come back with formal charges, a formal indictment. But a prosecutor, whoever that may be, as you point out, can and should make suggestions to a grand jury on which way they decide the evidence points. Ultimately, they decide whether or not there's probable cause for an indictment. Last question for you, David.
Sure.
The one-page order, which you have reviewed, suggests it is an unnamed prosecutor, but it seemed to open up, and I'm listening to you intently here, it seemed to open up potential jurisdiction to anywhere that seems appropriate to that prosecutor. So I take it this doesn't necessarily mean it would be in Washington, D.C., not necessarily in New York, potentially could be filed charges anywhere in the United States.
Yeah, that's what we're told. We're told that the Attorney General has the ability to confer that ability on any everyday federal prosecutor to give that jurisdiction to sort of widen out for the entire United States. And we're being told that this is not a special prosecutor or a special counsel, as we saw with Jack Smith and John Durham and Robert Hur. We're told this is just a federal prosecutor that is being given this temporary jurisdiction to take this before a grand jury. But at this point, it's not being referred to as a special counsel.
Just to complete the OCD of my curiosity, David, we've covered who, what, and where. I am compelled to ask you then when. Any sense of timeline on this grand jury?
I'm told that it could be months before anything actually happens as far as seeing any sort of results from the grand jury. It's not clear how long grand juries sit in each different jurisdiction. They're impaneled for different amounts of times. I've covered cases before where one grand jury hears some evidence and they're just getting ready to say, we're going to indict, and then their term and their service is over, so another grand jury comes in. I think that in speaking to the people we spoke to, they want to move quickly on this, but it all depends on what the grand jury wants to do and the amount of evidence. But I'm told that any indictments, I want to be clear, if there are indictments, because grand juries can come back and say we don't think there's enough evidence for indictments, that may take a little while.
Okay, David Spunt, excellent breaking news today on Attorney General Pam Bondi forwarding an order to a grand jury, to a prosecutor to seek a grand jury on the evidence we now know on what is called.
Shout out to Pam Bondi. Here we go.
The order that I'll sign today in a few moments directs the council to develop strategies to improve America's physical fitness and renew the American spirit, excellence, competitiveness, and sportsmanship. From the late 1950s until the 2013, graduate scholars all across our country competed against each other in the presidential fitness test, and it was a big deal.
President Trump putting a MAGA seal of approval on the presidential fitness test in public schools. It was phased out in 2013 under the Obama administration to, quote, minimize comparisons between children. A majority of kids ages 6 to 17 are...
Look, Obama, man. I can't even begin to explain to y'all. Obama, bro. Listen to this.
Out in 2013 under the Obama
country competed against each other in the presidential fitness test, and it was a big deal.
President Trump putting a MAGA seal of approval on the presidential fitness test in public schools. It was phased out in 2013 under the Obama administration to, quote, minimize comparisons between children. A majority of kids ages 6 to 17 are failing to get the recommended hour or more of physical activity that their bodies really require every single day. Look at that, D- on the scale in terms of how much our kids are moving out there. Earlier, I spoke with the HHS Secretary, RFK Jr. So I want to read this quote from Sports Illustrated from a piece that your uncle, President John Kennedy, wrote in 1960. And I think it's very revealing. It says, of course, modern advances and increasing leisure can add greatly to the comfort and enjoyment of life, but they must not be confused with indolence, with, in the words of Theodore Roosevelt, quote, slothful ease, with an increasing deterioration of our physical strength. So obviously it was a big concern to the president back then, and it's a big concern to this president and you as secretary as well. Tell us about this choice.
Well, yeah, that article was published in December of 1960. So about a month before my uncle took the oath of office, and he was signaling to the country that physical fitness of Americans was going to be one of the primary priorities of his administration. He watched what was happening. There was all kinds of studies that had come out at the time that showed that we were falling behind Europeans in terms of our physical fitness. My uncle and my father believed strongly that American democracy and the taming of the American wilderness and the achievements of our country were related to the strength, both the physical strength and the moral strength of America, and that we had this kind of beef jerky toughness that had allowed us to conquer the frontier, and that we were losing that advantage, that we were becoming soft, and that's what happened in ancient Rome prior to the collapse of the Roman Empire.
Yeah.
And so they had all of these sort of warning signs, and he launched the Presidential Council on Physical Fitness. I grew up with that. I was 10 years old at the time they launched it, and I grew up with it in school. You're way too young to remember any of that, but it was, we had to do push-ups, sit-ups, shuttle runs, 1 mile run, and a bunch of other activities.
Yeah, Secretary, I remember it very well. In fact, I failed it, I think, the first time in 4th grade, and it became the absolute core of my existence to get it the following year and to make sure that I didn't fail, because these tests were tough. And I just want to ask you, President Obama pulled back from this, and there's this philosophy out there that this kind of competition is not good for kids. This is the Washington Post yesterday. It says there have been long concerns that the test can involve public shaming of children in front of their peers, often described as embarrassing, humiliating, and traumatizing by those who had to take it. What do you say to that?
Well, I think competition is part of life. Yeah. And that, that we have to, I think parents have to be sensitive about how their children process experience, but they can't tell them that life is not going to be hard and that life is not a competition. It is a competition, and if we want to prepare children for a future, if we want a country that is strong in the world, we need kids who are willing to compete, and a lot of times that involves failure, and it may sometimes involve embarrassment. That's part of life. Yeah. Life is
embarrassment can sometimes be a good motivator. It was for me. I wanted that patch on my arm, and I still have it somewhere. It meant a lot to me. But it's interesting that even during that period, from 1960 through the early 2000s, obesity rates were climbing all when we had this test, and they continue to climb today. And we have numbers on childhood obesity. So one of my questions for you is, what will the test look like now? I mean, we all remember, the sit and reach and the pull-ups and all of it, but we've learned a lot since then. So can you tell us what the test will look like now?
I can't, because we don't know exactly what the tests are going to look like. That's why we have a commission, which the president launched this week. But we're going to, we're going to make sure, listen, right now, the average American kid is spending 7 hours in front of his screen a day. And the purpose of this is to make sure that kids get outdoors, make sure that kids have physical activity. It's absolutely critical. And I'm not sure exactly what the path is for achieving that, but we know what our objective is. Everybody wants our kids to get up. And, it contributes, this sedentary lifestyle is contributing to the malaise, the spiritual malaise that we have in this country, the emotional and depressive state that so many of our kids are in. You need to get out, you do competitive sports, work with teamwork, work with other kids, try to make it exciting for everybody, and try to make it enjoyable. We need our kids up, move a muscle, change a thought. If you want to get out of a bad mood, go out and do something physical.
It's so true. I mean, I said that to my kids from the time they were little. It's like, if you need to shake something off, you got to get outside and go for a walk, go for a run, get into nature, feel the sunshine on your face. I mean, this is the kind of thing that we have too many kids, sort of in a dark corner staring into a phone all the time. But give me a sense of when you hope this will be implemented. Are you going to be personally involved with deciding? I know you love to do pull-ups and push-ups and all that stuff. Are you going to be personally involved with deciding what these measures will be? And when do you hope to roll it out? And will it be mandatory for public schools to do this?
I'm on the commission. We don't know exactly what the protocols are going to be. We know, as I said, what our objective is, which is to get.
I got to tell y'all, man, this guy, RFK Jr., he is 71 years old. Take a look at that push-up right there. Yeah, Lord. Busky, Bucket Master. Busky, I'm calling on you now. Busky, give me 5.
Involved with deciding? I know you love to do pull-ups and push-ups and all that stuff. Are you going to be personally involved with deciding what these measures will be?
Give me 5.
And when do you hope to roll it out? And will it be mandatory for public schools to do this?
I'm on the commission. We don't know exactly what the protocols are going to be. We know, as I said, what our objective is, which is to get kids moving again and to get them playing competitive sports and team sports and achieving in individual competitions. I don't know exactly how we're going to incentivize that nationally and what percentage, whether it's going to be mandatory or whether we're going to, make it, incentivize it in some other ways. But we're going to try to get all the kids involved.
Okay. Well, it can't be everybody gets a trophy. It's got to be a big deal to get a patch to figure out, if you won or you lost, right? Not everyone's going to get one.
It was, we got a certificate, we got a commendation, we got the patch to wear, and those were all. Those were all emblems of honor.
Secretary, thank you very much.
All right, shout out to Z Demolish on Kick, because I'm streaming on Kick right now as well. So shout out to Z Demolish. There's always going to be bad actors, whether you are whoever you believe in or whatever you believe in, there's always going to be bad actors. So, your question, that is never going to stop in this world. It's always going to keep going. That's how this world has always been. That doesn't mean there are no good people in that region. It's just how it is. Hopefully, it stops and everybody realizes that love is the answer. Unity is the answer, bro. I hope that answers your question, Z Demolish. Now back to YouTube, okay? Busky, I was asking you to go down and give me 5. Not buckets. I need push-ups, Busky. Jet, MVP Jet, go on ahead and give me 5 push-ups. Anders. Well, I could say Anders. Anders could probably give me 5. Probably could give me 5. Now, C. Shelley with the good genes. 5 jumping jacks. 5 jumping jacks, C. Shelley. Jumping jacks, baby. Here we
All
go.
right, well, Trump is trying to make America fit again by bringing back the presidential fitness test for schools, requiring students to do things like run a mile and pull-ups.
The order that I'll sign today in a few moments directs the council to develop strategies to improve America's physical fitness and renew the American spirit, excellence, competitiveness, and sportsmanship.
Health, fitness, sports, nutrition, all of it. I think learning that at a young age sets you up for success in life. And without it, you're at a lesser place for it.
Help our youth be healthy and thrive.
And the importance of living a healthy, active lifestyle cannot be any more important than nowadays.
And as it goes with most Trump directives, the left is not into the health push. According to New York Times op-ed, thinness is a right-wing obsession. The writers doubled down on a podcast, going as far as to imply that it's racist to be health conscious.
Are they just part of the general environment right now, which is kind of like okay with being unabashedly pro skinny?
I think what happened with the body positivity movement is it got co-opted by the wellness movement. And so people stopped using language like, oh, I'm doing this to be thin. I'm doing this to be healthy. Healthy was always synonymous with thinness in the mainstream. And also, it's very white.
Okay, and liberals are still losing it over the Sydney Sweeney American Eagle ad campaign. Pop star Lizzo responded with the caption, "My jeans are black." And we also should say that American Eagle has released a statement saying Sydney Sweeney has great jeans, and it's always been about the jeans. They appreciate everybody who's wearing their jeans. I've always loved American Eagle jeans. All right, where do we start here? I think let's start with the presidential fitness test. When I was in 6th grade, Joey, we had to run a mile every morning because we would hike the Grand Canyon at the end of the year. I thought that was great. And now kids are going to be able to do this in their schools again.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want fat, lazy kids. Right? We just don't want that. Our country needs people that can run towards danger and run away from danger and not sit there and look up on their phone what is danger. And that's who our kids have turned into. We've done this to them. We poison them with the food. We hand them an iPad or an iPhone instead of kicking them out of the house and telling them to go get hurt, and we'll put a Band-Aid on it. I don't know if the presidential fitness test is the way to get there, but it's at least a forward-facing step in the right direction. I think anytime you can get Triple H and Harrison Butker together on something, they may agree politically, but the things they espouse aren't exactly the same. I think it's really cool to see these people that have been, in their own right, demonized by the left media and standing right beside Trump that also stand for something, and this thing being healthy kids. I mean, what I love about President Trump is no matter how he presents it, he really does present things that kind of say, the left, I dare you to go against this.
Right.
And they take the bait every time.
Yeah. So, Emily, this is part of a broader Make America Healthy Again push. Approximately 1 in 5 U.S. children and adolescents are obese. It's a serious health issue that underlies everything else that causes problems inside the country. So obviously, physical fitness is an important thing, whether it's this presidential fitness test or broadening out to join athletics, et cetera. But it's certainly a good thing for the country.
Yeah, and I think, the reviving the test, the most important thing about it, in addition, that movement is medicine, and is that it's a signal, right? That it's not just about calisthenics, but it's a cultural corrective here, because we've been told for the last 4 years that fitness was elitism and that self-improvement was oppression, health was pathologized, right? So now the president is saying actually strength and discipline and personal responsibility.
How is fitness oppression? How? We have to be healthy. How? His fitness. Matter of fact, I'm about to do a dumbbell workout.
Not only matter, but they're acknowledged. Like, we see you and it is good for you and our country if everyone is into it. And when the NYT columnists have decried thinness as some type of right-wing ideal, it really underscores that it's their worldview, not ours, which is a fear that excellence might be aspirational. And then you dig a little deeper and you say, well, what are they talking about when they talk about thinness? And the analysis was on the concept that apparently Christian right-wingers prioritize protein and non-synthetic.
Shout out to Jet, MVP Jet. It says, make the street light rule great again. Make the street light rule great again. Shout out to Jet MVP. Here we go.
Hormones, working out, building muscle mass. So it has nothing to do actually with this anorexia-based assumption. It's the fact that everyone actually wanted to optimize their health What is wrong with that? Well, again, see the left. They will always see it as racist, and from their lazy worldviews, they just want everyone else to be fat and lazy so they have an excuse to do so. But
right.
President Trump says, not on my watch.
All right, Piers, do you want to talk about shuttle runs and pull-ups or Lizzo versus Sydney Sweeney?
Well, I think speaking as the elite athlete at the panel desk,
that's right.
I didn't actually know that I was that right-wing until I looked at myself, realised how skinny I was, and thought, wow, I guess I am. Look, I knew the day would come when Donald Trump would do something where every rational human being in the world would obviously immediately, instinctively respond with, that's a great idea. 1 in 5 kids in America are obese. Let's get them at school doing stuff which makes them a little bit fitter, a little bit healthier. And you see the reaction, and you're just like, what is wrong with you? What is wrong with you? Imagine hearing this news and thinking, oh, for God's sake, Trump's making our kids fitter, healthier. This is disgusting. This is why I hate the man. This is why you shouldn't be president of the United States. And that's literally what some of them are doing as they foam at the mouth. And again, my message to my liberal friends, do you know what would be really empowering for you, for your mental health, for my mental health, for all of our mental health? If you just heard a campaign like this and you went, you know what? That's a good idea. I agree with Donald Trump. I agree. Why don't we all just come together and agree, let's make our kids fitter? Another interesting point on this, RFK mentioned about bringing competition back to schools. I loved hearing that.
Oh, well, that's not allowed.
Because, we've got to a stage.
That means you're better than others.
Yeah, and we've got to a stage, again, with the woke left. And I have nothing in common with these people. I used to identify as a liberal. I can't now because they've been hijacked by these lunatics.
Does that mean we're going gun shopping?
I think we may well be, Joe. We may well be. I'll bring my brother was a British Army colonel. He's a very good shot, so I'll bring him. We'll go out together.
We'll get him there soon.
But the thing about winning is that the wokeism mindset is that winning is actually wrong. Losing is to be celebrated because then you can be a victim. You can wallow in not winning, and winners should.
Exactly. People like to be victims. It's like victimization mindset. It's not what I ever want to be. Like, don't be out there jumping up and smiling and crying victimization mindset. No. Fight for what you want. Work for what you want. Believe in yourself. Work hard and smart. And believe God is your strength, and you're going to get anything you want in this world. Nobody's stopping you from becoming what you want to become. All right? Stop being a victim. It's 2025, ladies and gentlemen. Now, of course, there are still bad actors in this world. Okay? There's good and there's bad. I'm not saying there's no bad. However, go out there, be who you want to be, work hard every day, and let God do the rest.
Be frowned upon. When did we get to that? When did America or the United Kingdom get to a place where you think winning is losing and losing is winning? So I applaud this, and I think that Trump is absolutely spot on. And to the woke left, wake up, smell the cappuccino, agree it's a good idea, and just you'll stop yourselves hyperventilating. It'll be healthy for you as well.
So, Greg, as our resident health expert.
Yes.
What is your opinion about this whole thing?
It's a war on jolly kids. When I grew up, the pudgy kids were the fun ones. They had the best food in the fridge. They had the best jokes, and you could stay up all night at their house. Here's the thing: I think that all of you guys have touched on this kind of overarching issue. Good things are hard to do, so don't do them.
That's exactly right.
It is what you can look at, like physical fitness, beauty, hard work, self-care, following the law, waiting in line, patriotism, citizenship, self-defense, having a family. All of these things have been denigrated in kind of this modern progressive era, and they are aspirational, but more important, they're also hard. And the woke has told you, and it's so convenient. How convenient is it that the things that they hate also happen to be really hard.
Yeah.
So it's like, not only do you not have to do those things, by not doing them, you're actually doing good. So you tell the body positivity movement that the morbidly obese person, it's actually a good thing. This is actually your identity to be 400 pounds. It's actually really good. Discipline is actually oppressive. So the bottom line is everything good in life requires hard work. Especially up front for the long-term benefit. That's whether it's exercise or music lessons or whatever. So underneath this criticism is a fear of effort. And you see it when you look at their mugshots, Antifa. These are unruly slobs, and it's actually kind of sad because there's somebody missing in their life that needs to grab them and go, dude. You're just wasting your life. You're wasting your life. You could be this, you could be that, you could be this, but you put your identity before meaning. And that is what's destroyed, I think, a lot of these ugly, fat people.
Unruly slobs. All right. Coming up, voters tell.
Greggy. There we go. On the 5.
Hello, everyone. I'm Emily Compagno, along with Piers Morgan,
Emily.
Joey Jones, Katie Pavlich, and Greg Gutfeld. It's 5 o'clock in New York City, and this is The 5. She's back and more bitter than ever. Failed presidential candidate Kamala Harris giving her first post-election interview to failed late-night host Stephen Colbert. The former Veep whined about the broken political system, the same one that handed her the nomination without a single vote. She also punted when asked who the current leader of the Democratic Party is.
For now, I don't want to go back in the system. I think it's broken. I always believed that as fragile as our democracy is, our systems would be strong enough to defend our most fundamental principles. And I think right now that they're not as strong as they need to be. I want to talk with people, and I don't want it to be transactional where I'm asking for their vote.
Who's leading?
Bro, she was the vice president of the United States for 4 years and ran to be the president and lost. And now the system is broken. Oh, I see.
Democratic Party. I'm just curious.
There are lots of leaders, and
there's generally a leader of the Democratic Party. That's the leader of the Democratic Party. Who comes to mind?
I think there are a lot of, I'm not going to go through names because then I'm going to leave somebody out and then I'm going to hear about it.
It's just a preview of what we can expect on her upcoming book tour. She also served up some of her famous word salad.
How's Doug?
My birthday's in October. The election's in November. You see where I'm going. And Dougie kind of dropped the ball on my big birthday. We would have these events where people who I'm sure had never been under the same roof with the people who are standing next to them. I like these kinds of ear pods that have the thing.
And Kamala's not the only Democrat haunting the party. Joe Biden stumbled back on stage to ramble about existential threats and other malarkey.
Not since those tumultuous days in the 1960s has this fight been so existential to who we are as a nation, with marginalized groups so dramatically under attack. It's not enough to honor the heroes that came before us. We need new heroes now. No, we do. We need you to follow in their footsteps.
And for real. And when President Otto Penn is discussing heroes, he may be referring to Mike Donilon. That's Biden's longtime strategist who testified yesterday he would have pocketed an extra $4 million if Joe got reelected. Greg, pick your agonizing figure two.
I'll do both quickly. One, the interview was pathetic. It was basically two rejects consoling each other and somehow believing that neither of them had anything to do with their demise. It's the system, it's the voters, it's the viewers. They're what's broken. I felt like I was listening to two outcasts from The Bachelor sharing a limo back to the airport. You know what? We were too good for him. But when you see them together, it kind of does tell you that the loss that the Democrats experienced was a package deal. It was kind of bigger than that. It wasn't just Kamala. It wasn't just Colbert. NPR, radical campus bureaucrats. Look what's happening to Harvard and Columbia. Left-wing nonprofits going under. Media Matters. There's all these entities that could only survive together in their own insulated, corrupt power. And as one goes down, which was Biden and then Kamala, they're all going down with Joe. He looked terrible, but I mean, what else is new? But speeches are where he's at because he could fumble through the most hysterical nonsense, but there's no pushback. He could just blah, la, 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 la. But it does expose one of the great lies of his presidency, that he never was in charge because he came in as a moderate, but he speaks like Angela Davis on Geritol. He does nothing even remote to healing. Remember, he was going to heal a country. He's a conduit still for division. That speech is the same one he's been doing for 4 years. If Trump is an existential threat to marginalized communities, can you please name one? And it has to be an American one. Is it blacks? Is it Hispanics? Is it gays? How are we dismantling the Constitution? See, when you're doing a speech, he doesn't have to provide that. He just says it. He's the detritus of a dead party. This stuff doesn't work anymore. His batteries are dead. I think we almost should just stop showing him.
Yeah, it's sort of like being shown photographs of an autopsy. Yeah, exactly.
It's an open casket at this point.
We need a graphic warning.
Some people like that.
Yeah.
So, Katie, all right, we're seeing one horse that's out to pasture, should be, and then Kamala, she's on a book tour. She says she's not running for governor. She can't even name a leader. What's on the horizon here?
I mean, watching this interview, it makes me think that her book's going to be a total dud because she can't even explain who's in charge, what actually went wrong. She's deflecting and saying that it's a matter of our democracy falling apart, even though we just had an election to elect Donald Trump and won every single swing state and beat her after she was anointed and didn't win, as you mentioned, a single vote, not just in that election, but in the primaries when she ran for president the first time. This is another rebrand of her. I'm happy to see her say that she doesn't want to be in public office. She says she wants to go talk to people outside in the country. She wants to listen to them. Based on the fact that she went to Stephen Colbert for this interview and didn't name a single policy position that the Democrats maybe went too far on, I don't think she's actually interested in talking to people. I think she's interested in holding on to her resume, doing what she can to make money, giving speeches. But I would say whoever keeps booking her and Joe Biden to keep talking about 2024 and the Biden administration, when Democrats really want to move on and really hope to, get some political power against Trump in the midterms, they're sabotaging the Democrats. And maybe they should stop booking them for public appearances because it's not working out well for them at all.
Right. In the hundreds of times she mentions, I talked about it in the book to Stephen Colbert. Mm-hmm. It was so sort of revealing to me because all of us here at the table, we've all written books. And when we talk about it, we say, I wrote this, I wrote this. She always just said she talked because clearly she just had a conversation with someone and they took the word salad and typed it up for her. But what do you see on the horizon for the Democrat Party? Because as Katie said, so these guys are still getting booked. They're sort of the proverbial leaders, but at the same time, obviously they're empty vessels, but we shouldn't celebrate and spike the football too early.
Yeah, well, in my book, Behind the Badge, which is available wherever books are sold. Listen, the book is labeled 107 days. And I think that she does think she's going to get a mulligan on this presidential election because of the situation that she was, in her words, put into. And I say in her words, in other words, to say that's probably how she wants to present it. And you know what? It's probably true. I mean, she has a stronger argument than a lot of other Democrats in the sense that have failed in an election, like Stacey Abrams or Beto O'Rourke, that have recycled through the washing machine and come out worse each time. I don't think she has any kind of major appeal, but I also know how lost in the wilderness Republicans were through the entire Obama years post-Bush. And regardless of what you think about Bush, he was probably as or more unpopular than Biden is now at the end of his second term. So this idea that Democrats are they're trashed and they're wandering without a leader until the leader shows up, sure, but that can happen overnight in a world where we all have cell phones. So this idea that you're taking some sort of victory lap over the Democrats right now is crazy to me. It might be Gavin Newsom. It might be Kamala finding her words. It might be someone in the House that we never talk about, but they're always a day and a moment away from getting popular again. And sometimes that's even when Republicans shoot themselves in the foot, which for me is not a big deal, but for most it would be.
So, Piers, all right, Biden said we need new heroes now. So to Joey's point, is that sort of a veiled admission, look, we need someone, anyone? Who could it be? Because we've got a lot of Instagram politicians there in that party. So I think popping up, what they really need is a human.
Yes, that would be a good. That's
a low bar.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a very, very low bar.
Keep it low bar.
First of all, lovely to be back, and lovely to see a handsome man in the middle seat there. Makes a big difference with Jesse not here. Look, speaking frankly, as your friend from across the pond, they're a complete and utter shambles, aren't they, the Democrats?
Yes,
I mean, they've hit record low approval polls. She talks about a broken system. And her big book. I have a book coming, actually, genuinely, called Woke is Dead. And in a way, listening to her word salading away with Colbert, who is the epitome of the late night woke guy who hates Trump and everything about him and believes all the nonsense that the Democrats have spewed for the last few years. You know, woke is dead. They just haven't got the memo yet. And so what you're seeing is the last kind of vestiges of that mindset, which was repudiated in the most spectacular fashion in the last election. And, you know, if they're wondering why Donald Trump got reelected, partly it's his huge personality, his policies about the economy, about immigration and so on, but also because he saw through the number one fault line, I think, of the Democrats, their absolute abandonment of common sense.
Yeah.
And you can chart it really, I discussed this last time I was on this show, the moment you try and convince the public that it's perfectly reasonable and fair to have a 6'4" man dominating in a women's sport like swimming or athletics or whatever, you have lost your marbles. So they've got to get back to common sense. The reason she couldn't answer the question, I don't think they know who the future is. I agree with you, Joey. I do think history shows somebody's going to come through here. They've got to get somebody like a Bill Clinton. They've got to get somebody in the center who can return them to at least looking and sounding like they understand common sense. I don't know who that person is, but they've got to do it fast because right now, looking at Kamala, looking at Biden, I mean, my God, the idea that if that guy had won and had become president for the next 4 years of the United States, he can barely move.
If I saw him like in a public space, I would I think I was like in a haunted house.
No, it's true.
Whew. Joe Biden, ladies and gentlemen. All right. Now that we have been burdened by what could have been, okay, and we're now piling on, okay, we're going to go to South Carolina. Nancy Mace is running for governor. Here we go.
Nancy Mace, Congresswoman, welcome. Good to have you here today. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Obviously, this is a crowded field. The president has not endorsed anyone yet. You show yourself standing side by side with him on that page. Is that misleading? Does it make it look like he's already endorsed you?
No, he has not endorsed anybody in this race yet. We are the fifth one to enter, but we are leading in all of the polls. And I will tell you, we have a huge opportunity here in the midterms in 2026 to elect America First governors. I support the president and his agenda, and I want voters to know that I support him. And as governor, I will support his agenda all across the state of South Carolina.
So I see you in the one poll that I'm looking at 16. Alan Wilson is at 15, the South Carolina Attorney General. And then you've got the Lieutenant Governor, Pam Yvette, who is the Lieutenant Governor under Henry McMaster. We're looking at some of these numbers up on the screen right now. You've had a back and forth with Alan Wilson. I think people remember him as prosecuting the Murdoch case, which we covered very closely here. You accused him of not taking action after you said that you alerted investigators to a claim that you had been physically abused. His office said that there was never any request for assistance from his office. Can you clarify what happened there, Congresswoman Mace?
Oh, that's absolutely a false statement from the Attorney General. I actually received my victim's rights advocate 11 months later through his office. So one of the reasons that I'm running for governor, Martha, is that I want everybody across South Carolina to know that I am fighting for them. I have been through the system And if I'm treated this way as a member of Congress, imagine how the average South Carolinian, the average American is treated in our justice system. And so I'm fighting for everybody. I'm fighting for Scott Spivey's family in Myrtle Beach, where that when his killer was not investigated for murder, the hundreds of murder and attempted murder cases we have across the state of South Carolina that aren't being prosecuted, rape cases, et cetera. I want to get taxes lower in South Carolina. We have the highest state income tax in the Southeast at roughly 6%. I want to improve our education system. I'm watching other states take the lead and do better than South Carolina. And I know that we have a huge opportunity to really address our issues, our challenges. And this morning, I proposed several policies for the future of South Carolina to make us more prosperous and stronger than ever before. And if folks want to help out, they can chip in at nancymace.org today.
So, obviously a lot of people associate
Nancy.
the governorship of South Carolina with Nikki Haley. She then went on to become the UN ambassador, ran for president, ran for the Republican nomination. She has already thrown her support behind her good friend Ralph Norman, who is a current congressman. How much weight do you expect Nikki Haley's endorsement will have in the South Carolina race?
I think the most important endorsement in any race in the country in the midterm election is that of President Donald J. Trump.
There you go.
He is the most powerful man in America right now, the leader of the free world, the leader of our party. He has delivered on every promise he made in his campaign. And his endorsement
Nancy.
would be huge for anyone running for governor here in South Carolina or anywhere else across the country. And we're going to work very hard to try to earn it.
Has he given you any indication that he is leaning towards you in this race, or whether or not he expects to, when he expects to make an endorsement?
I will never speak for the president himself. I will tell you that all of the candidates are in touch with the White House. They're giving them their numbers. And really, we have to roll up our sleeves, work hard, and earn it. Nothing is given to anyone who runs for office in this country or Donald Trump's endorsement. We all have to earn it. And I will promise you, no one will work harder than we will.
Earn
It's
it.
a tight race. You got a lot of people in the mix there. It'll be very interesting to watch. Thank you for joining.
Man, I got to say, man, just her saying that you have to earn, your endorsement from the president of the United States and also earn the vote of the people. Come on, man. Shout out to Nancy Mace. Let's see what happens. All right, the 5.
Well, the Democratic Party is short on policy, but boy, oh boy, they are full of stunts. A whole posse of Texas Democrats skipping town on a private plane, fleeing the Lone Star State to dodge a vote that would have advanced the GOP's redistricting plans. Republicans are looking to scoop as many as 5 new House seats next year, and the Dems' big plan to stop it, well, they've tried it before. They want to go hide out in friendly blue state territory, places like Illinois and New York, where the governors are rolling out the welcome mat.
We're not here to play political games.
Texas governor would bend a knee to Donald Trump because he's afraid to lose an election.
I think we all know Donald Trump is a cheater, a cult leader and would-be dictator of the United States, tells Texas to midstream change the game when they know that they're going to lose in 2026. All bets are off.
This is a war.
Shout out to Dr. Luke, the GOAT. The GOAT. He is called the GOAT for a reason. Shout out to Dr. Luke. He says, hello, beautiful people. God bless you, Genesis. God bless you, Dr. Luke. Thank you for the super chat. You are welcome. Thank you.
We are at war. And that's why the gloves are off.
There is no felony in the Texas Penal Code for what he says. So respectfully, he's making up some
Well, some folks are pointing out the irony of the lawmakers fleeing to Illinois, which is heavily gerrymandered, if you check out those districts there. And Texas Democrat Jasmine Crockett is at risk of losing her seat in the redistricting, and perhaps that explains why she's been extra salty towards President Trump.
Listen, Donald Trump is a piece of shit. Okay, we know that. Yes, he is. But in a functioning democracy, he still would not be able to get away with this.
And breaking just moments ago, Texas Governor Greg Abbott has ordered the arrest of the runaway Democrats, saying, quote, there are consequences for dereliction of duty. Earlier, Abbott outlined what potential charges they could face.
Very simply, it would be bribery if any lawmaker took money to perform or to refuse to perform an act in the legislature. And the reports are these legislators have been both, they sought money and they offered money to skip the vote, to leave the legislature, to take a legislative act. That would be bribery. There's one way to cure that. And that is, if they get back to the state of Texas and make quorum today.
But apparently that's not going to happen. Jesse, do you remember in December of 2021, the TikTok Texans left, they fled, they went to Washington, D.C. It was like one of the great political comedies of all time, and now they're trying it again.
Yeah, so Jesse Jr. didn't want to go to camp the other day because I was driving him, and he wanted mommy to drive. And
she's a better driver.
No, definitely not. And then so he finds out I'm driving, and he starts crying and runs upstairs and hides in my room. And I get to him and I say, what's the problem? Why don't you want Dad to take you? And he says, well, mommy, when she takes me to camp, she stops at Dunkin' Donuts for munchkins.
Uh-oh.
Now I get why mom drives. So I said, we'll stop for a treat. And then I drove him and he forgot about the treat. This is the same kind of infantile behavior you're seeing. They're crying, they're running, and they're throwing a tantrum until they get what they want. This also has happened on the Republican side, too. In 1988, the Democrats in the Senate had a campaign finance bill, and the Republicans couldn't filibuster it. So the Republican senators disappeared. And what did Robert Byrd do, who was a member of the Klan, Jessica? He ordered the sergeant-at-arms to gather up a bunch of Capitol Police officers and hunt down and arrest Republican senators. And they find Bob Packwood holed up in his office, and he tried to obstruct the door. So they bust down the door, they handcuff him, and they drag him feet first back onto the Senate floor. This has happened a lot recently, though, with the Democrats. From Texas to Indiana to Wisconsin, they're running away from their jobs. The American people don't know the word gerrymander. You go out into the street, you ask them what gerrymander is, they don't know and they don't care. They have other things they're dealing with. They know what it looks like when you don't go to work, and all the headlines right now are Democrats run away from their jobs. People want politicians to show up, and they're not showing up. They say the Republicans are pulling a power grab. What do you think bringing 20 million migrants into the country was? You know, they're saying this is an abuse of power. Put the map back up of Illinois. That looked like an earthworm on LSD connecting blue cities.
Jesse Jr. did it.
Exactly. So they're saying that we're going to steal the midterms, the Republicans. Well, the last time Trump was president, they stole the midterms by hovering the Russia hoax over his head, which cost him the House. Now, Obama told Democrats a couple weeks ago to get tough. And what did they do? They ran away. Do men run away? Is this how you get men back? Did the men at the Alamo in Texas run away?
No, but they all died.
No. They didn't. And that might happen. And that might happen in the redistricting, but they didn't hop on a private jet.
Joe, if you look at that map of Illinois, I pointed out on America's Newsroom today that Republicans won in about 47% of the popular vote in 2024, but they only hold 17% of the seats. Now, that Illinois chose to do that. That's what living in Illinois is like. I don't know if this is the best place to flee to.
So a lot of these places, when they gerrymander, it's almost they're complicit with both parties. Hey, give me a more red district, I'll give you a more blue district. We see that a lot. North Carolina went through it in the courts, I think, a couple of years ago. It's nothing new. I'm kind of with Jesse, though, when you talk about the amount of illegal immigrants that came into the country, I was like, well, they can't vote. Well, they do get counted in the census. And when they get counted in the census, that decides where these districts come up at and which states get them. California has 1.8 million illegal immigrants. That's 2+ congressional seats. New York has more than 600,000. That's almost a full congressional seat. Now, those two states actually lost seats because everybody else is fleeing. But the idea that Republicans are cheating because they're doing what both parties have done since the inception of this country, yet they ignore that and they call that the great replacement theory, like it's racist. No, it's not racist. It's matter of fact. It's really difficult to see like Senator Padilla sit there and cry foul.
One of the things, Jessica, that is kind of ironic about this is that you have 31 million Texans, I believe. Hello, are you calling me? And they've had like 100, like I think a net migration of 131,000 people over a short period of time. So there's this population growth in Texas, but Illinois is one of the places that is losing population because of the way that it's governed. So I found that a little bit curious. I'm sure you have a lot to say about this. I would just like to point out that I don't want Jasmine Crockett to lose her seat.
I know, it brings you guys infinite joy.
I enjoy her, and I think she's a real, like, one of life's great characters.
Well, hopefully she won't, but odds are that that is what's going to happen once everyone does eventually have to come home, whether that is tomorrow or it's in December, and they can hide out that long. And this isn't about population.
And this is facts, okay? A lot of people do say that Jasmine Crockett is, some conservatives say she is a hood rat or she's ratchet or whatever. But the truth is, she's actually enjoyable to watch, okay? She makes this whole clown show, like C. Shelley would say, interesting. Because you can see how, in my opinion, beneath the Democrat Party has gone, okay? You can see how far down they've gone with people like Jasmine Crockett, okay? AOC. If those two people are not in the Democrat coalition anymore, it's like there's nothing to watch in the Democrat Party. I mean, who are you going to watch? Gavin Newsom? I don't think so.
Coming in and out of blue states, it's about the fact that J.B. Pritzker can afford to do this. And when they went to D.C. a few years ago, they ran out of money. J.B. Pritzker's never running out of money, and he's got a bunch of Hyatt hotels, and they can each have a suite, and they can hang out there for as long as they need to. But the idea that people are watching this happen, or at least people who vote like I do or have similar values to me, are seeing this just as people running away from their job is ludicrous. What they are seeing is the fact that Donald Trump called up Greg Abbott, and redistricting is supposed to happen once every 10 years. That's when the census happens. He's saying, I want a mid-cycle redistrict because I only have a three-seat majority, and I need a bigger cushion. So get me 5 more seats. So Greg Abbott calls a special session, not about the flooding, not about what happened in Camp Mystic, but so that he can steal seats from Democrats so that Jazzy won't be able to have her seat any longer. It's important to remind people that in 2021, there was a bill, the For the People Act, H.R. 1, and it would have banned all gerrymandering, and every single Democrat voted for it, and every single Republican voted against it. Republicans want it this way. They want to use this to their advantage, and of course, there are some states, if you can do it, why wouldn't you get as many seats as possible? But the way in which Abbott is going about this has made people, even like Eric Holder, who runs an organization that is fundamentally against this, change his tune, because the California proposal, and Newsom has been out front on this as well, only has this happen for a few years. So it will go back to normal cadence, and the independent commissions will come back into play. But if you don't fight fire with fire, what are we supposed to do? In a midterm, you're supposed to pick up seats. So we're supposed to just sit there and take it like this? That's why Hochul says that we are at war. And it looks that way to me, and I'm someone who doesn't usually argue for this kind of behavior. What is unfair is in Texas, 45% of the vote goes to Democrats. They would only get 21% of the seats.
Is that also unfair in Illinois?
Yeah, I said they took advantage of it.
I mean, and that's the thing. And so let me ask the California expert here, if this is a gerrymandered nuclear arms race, if California decides to do the same thing, could this backfire on Republicans?
Well, I think the application matters. So there were some critics, for example, that said, look, this map could have been a lot uglier. So I think there's a spectrum indeed of what the impact is. So the answer to your question is, in true attorney form, is it depends. And I think respectfully, I don't think this is fighting fire with fire. I see this as stunts masquerading as statesmanship. Legislators fleeing their constitutional duty to a blue state, somehow this friendly refuge for them, and totally, absconding their legislative duty. It just shows that they prefer theater to governance. Like, they can't have that substantive discussion, and instead they just have to tick-tock away all day long. And the irony, earlier today, Ann Johnson, a Texas Democrat, was being interviewed, and she said, this is an extraordinary tactic. This is the final straw that we only employ when there's a complete threat to democracy. The threat to democracy is all of the legislators leaving the building. And then when pointed out by the host, well, you did do this in 2021, so it seems like it sort of happens a lot. She acknowledged, yes, that happened and that it didn't work at that time. So this is failure upon failure. And I note that the narrative being pushed always goes back to this, because when confronted with the fact that you've done this before, you pulled the stunt, it didn't work, what did she do? She drew a football analogy that didn't make sense. And then she said, well, at the end of the day, we need Texans to know, does their governor serve Trump or does he serve Texans? And so it's always going to come back to this. Trump is bad and he's at the root at all evil. When they're also saying, well, in these new districts, the conservative Hispanics are outweighing the Democratic Hispanics and the white voters. Well, that's exactly what happened in 2024. So for me, this is the application of reality then, rather than the distortion that the Democrats always hope for.
But Trump did ask for it explicitly. He wants those 5 extra seats. Don't you think it should just be every 10 years as it has been?
Well, we'll see when the Voter Rights Act is called into question at first SCOTUS, and I'm pretty sure they'll rule in this favor.
And real quick, Texas, the legislature only meets every 2 years. So most of what they do is under special session. It isn't like this is some completely out of the blue kind of thing. And what exactly do you want them?
Is out of the blue.
What exactly do you want them to do in response to the floods? What would you like for them to call a special? Because you brought that in, like you're comparing the two things.
Well, go over the alarm system, give them the billions of dollars.
Is part of the thing today.
Well, it's secondary.
I am for more competitive districts. When Bill Hemmer's at the board on election night, it would be great for him to have more than a handful of congressional seats for him to look at and say, these are the 18, more than 18 that we need to watch. I think one year it was only 34. I'm for that. But when you say destroy democracy, this is the same crowd that wants to pack the court and blow up the filibuster. And now they're saying that Texas redistricting is going to destroy the.
One thing is for sure, Democrats, lawmakers, and politicians that always make it seem like the only problem the United States has is Donald J. Trump. And they never actually put up a policy or articulate their policy for the people. As soon as they open their mouth, well, Trump is a dictator, is an authoritarian. That's all they say. What do you want to do for the people, Democrat? Nope, they're never going to tell you. They'll tell you how Trump is the bad guy. Just like Hakeem Jeffries. He spoke for over 8 hours about how Trump is destroying America. What are you going to do for the United States? What are your policies going to do for America? That's what Democrats should be thinking about. And I hope their new leader, if they ever find one, will actually take this into consideration. Talk about Americans. Talk about the American ordinary citizens, the people who go to work every single day to provide for their families.
Well, the woke mob's grabbing their pitchforks again. They're having another meltdown over Sydney Sweeney's American Eagle Great Jeans ad after spinning it into some bizarre eugenics conspiracy. A liberal outlet looked into her voter registration and discovered...
I'm telling y'all, man. Dr. Luke, the GOAT, strikes again, baby. Shout out to Dr. Luke, the GOAT. He says, ladies and gentlemen, the GOAT strikes again. The GOAT strikes again, ladies and gentlemen. Shout out to Dr. Luke. He says, the only people complaining are misinformed troublemakers. Please be peacemakers. I'm telling y'all, you better listen to the GOAT, ladies and gentlemen. The only people complaining are misinformed troublemakers. Please be peacemakers. All right? Can you be peacemakers, Americans? Huh?
She's a Republican in Florida. Luckily, the biggest Republican in the land is stepping in to back her up. Watch.
After Sydney Sweeney, it came out this weekend that she was a registered Republican. Any thoughts on that?
That who was?
Sydney Sweeney. She's like a very hot actress right now.
She's a registered Republican?
Yes.
Oh, now I love her ad. Is that right? Is Sydney Sweeney? You'd be surprised at how many people are Republicans. That's what I wouldn't have known, but I'm glad you told me that. If Sydney Sweeney is a registered Republican, I think her ad is fantastic.
And now the libs are really going to lose it after video emerged of Sydney Sweeney packing heat at Terran Tactical, showing off her serious gun skills. Joey, I'm going to start with you, the expert on
Don't you just love that look of joy on her face as she's reholstering her gun? So that place, Terran Tactical, is really kind of, it's legendary. That's where Keanu Reeves trained for all the John Wick movies. Jennifer Garner's trained there, Chris Hemsworth, Michael B. Jordan. So that's really cool to see her doing
That's where my Glock is from.
Is it
My
really?
Copperhead Glock 34 is from Terran Tactical, and it is an honor to own one of their firearms.
Mine too.
Yeah.
I bet. I bet. I think a Glock is a gun.
Got that.
The reason why I point that out is I get texts from friends that are on shows, actively in Hollywood right now, and they'll send me a picture of me on the TV in the green room. But they would never post that on social media. They would never tell someone, hey, I watched Fox News or I voted for President Trump. I think that tide is starting to turn. I think it started to turn in this election. Not just celebrities, but culture
She's bad,
not
yo.
demonizing people that are on.
She got great genes, I'll tell you that much. She got great genes, ladies and gentlemen. Take a look. She's hitting almost every single target. That is some great genes, I'll tell you that much.
Right. And I think that really scares Democrats absolutely to death. And they look for every opportunity to attack and say, don't you remember that Trump is evil? Don't you remember that the right is evil? And the latest iteration of that is to take an actress that is, for whatever reason, it may be how she looks, it may be her acting skills, one of the, like the reporter said, hottest actress,
Great genes,
one of
baby.
the most sought after right now. And to take her
Great
and
genes.
villainize her because she did an ad campaign, something very similar to what Beyonce did for Levi not long ago. Man, you just talk about no cards to play. It really looks pathetic.
And maybe with this tide turning, Dana, American Eagle doubled down, right? There was no general counsel written apology. They said, yeah, actually, it's about genes. This is great.
I admire the company for not saying anything until last week when they said something very little. But Sydney Sweeney hasn't said anything either. I also believe that, good for her for registering however she wanted to. I also believe in the secret ballot. It is a public record, so people could go, and if you want to go and look at all the Hollywood actors, I guess we could do that. But I respect her privacy. I also respect her very hard work because, yes, she is beautiful, gorgeous. She's got all of those things going for her. She also works very, very hard. And the difference between what American Eagle did, one, it's time. Right? Now the DEI has been washed out. President Trump has come on board, and people are like, thank goodness we don't have to talk about that anymore. The difference with the Dylan Mulvaney flap was that it was a part of the company ethos. And if you remember, when you got a look at the corporate equality index that they were doing, and also the human rights campaign, basically demanding that the corporate America turn over a new leaf and ruin their brands, and they're still paying for that. And American Eagle, I don't think it's that weird to have an American woman advertising American jeans. And like you said, when somebody pointed out to me that Beyonce did the same thing, I'm like, oh, okay. I just saw it over there on Times Square. Beyonce's in the Times Square billboards everywhere in jeans.
And, and it's been straight white men that are the devil for so long. I'm cool with it being blonde-headed white women. Let them take the mantle for a while. Let them be the villains.
I'll help you, Dana. So, Jesse, to all of this point, right, the doxing's not working. Cancel culture is not working anymore. It seems like the libs are sort of pulling out the same tired play, but no one's apologizing.
And look, I got to say this. The fact that I don't really talk about pop stars, but the fact that Beyonce actually had her own ad with Levi and she had a blonde hair. She had blonde hair, ladies and gentlemen. Blonde hair. Nobody said anything. Okay? I didn't hear anybody say, oh, well, she is not blonde. Everybody went along with it. Oh, hell. But now Sydney Sweeney comes along with great genes and everybody's crying. Well, we got Busky with the buckets.
Backing down. Everyone's proud to be a Republican right now. It's not going to work at all.
I don't see it working. They've called a blonde-haired, blue-eyed actress a Nazi for a week. And this is a Madison Avenue campaign thing that they've done since the 80s, the play on words with jeans. They've done it with brown-eyed girls, blacks and blondes. And so Trump, who is in the culture, because he watches TV all the time, seizes on this, champions this great American clothing company, and the Democrats lose another culture war battle. They are winless in the culture war over the last couple of years. They're like, Dana, the Cleveland Browns
they're the
of
worst.
politics. And so my question is, why are Democrats so obsessed with Nazis? Everything is Nazis. So when I hear someone has good genes, I think hot parents. I don't think Hitler. They think Hitler all the time. And the CEO is Jewish. He's not thinking Hitler. He's thinking sex sells because he's smart. And the stock's up 20%. Now, every girl wants to look like her, and every guy wants to look at her. And the Democrats think, wait a second, why don't we call her a Nazi and boycott the company? They spent $20 million on how to get men back. Just stop doing that. Whatever you're doing, just stop doing it. And you know how this ends? She's going to marry Barron. And it's going to create the greatest political dynasty in American history.
Oh, my gosh. Jessica, do you think hot parents also?
Definitely. Really hot parents. I find Sydney Sweeney incredibly attractive. And she's a classic Americana, right? Blonde, blue-eyed. If that's what floats your boat, and it floats a lot of boats, then I'm all for it. But I do think that trying to pin this on the Democratic Party writ large is not borne out by the conversations that are being had. There are no...
Just imagine Sydney Sweeney actually dating Barron Trump. Uh-oh. All right. Here we go again. The GOAT, Dr. Luke, he says, happy eyes and angry eyes are still causing everyone to talk about the company. And the cancel culture clause are not sharp anymore. It's just stating facts. Dr. Luke is just stating facts, yo. Because whether you are happy about the ad or you are angry about the ad, you're still watching the ad. You're still talking about the company. And the cancel culture clause are not as sharp as they used to be when the previous administration was in there. All right, so TDS is literally in the garbage right now. It's over. Everybody's wide awake, okay? Everybody's wide awake and realizing, wait, what were we doing for the past 4 years? Okay. We deprived our eyes from seeing good genes like this. Come on, yo.
No elected representatives that are posting TikToks about the eugenicist movement from within the American Eagle headquarters. There are influencers or people with with social media accounts that are talking about it, but this has not been a celebrity cause in the same way that the Dylan Mulvaney conversation was.
Lizzo weighed in.
She's not elected to anything.
But a celebrity. She's the celebrity.
Well,
what
but
about
you're
like
saying the Democrats, this is not going to work. For the midterms, if you try to pin the Sydney Sweeney campaign on us, it will not work. So you're going to have to...
Sydney Sweeney is campaigning for Republicans.
I don't know if that's true.
You just haven't heard
the
yet.
number one predictor of what your politics are is what your family is. We know that she comes from a conservative family. This wasn't surprising to me at all. And I think you should enjoy her content if you want to. I enjoy most of it.
Jesse, does it intimidate you that she can work on cars?
A little bit.
Does it intimidate me?
Uh-oh.
No. Does it impress me? Yes. And she shoots a gun better than tampon. You see that?
Uh-oh. And she works on cars. I don't know if it's just, an ad showing her working on cars, but if she works on cars for real, count me in. Count me in, yo. All right, here we go.
Democrats are just saying no to Kamala. Politico talking to nearly 24 Democrat insiders who were begging the failed Veep to sit the midterms out after she nixed a run for California governor, but kept 28 in her back pocket. One strategist saying this, I wouldn't want her in my district. And other Democrats are giving Kamala a collective sigh.
Would you encourage former Vice President Kamala Harris to run for president in 2028.
I would encourage Vice President Harris to follow her heart.
Is Kamala Harris the right person to be the Democratic standard bearer in 2028?
Well, it's about the message and what they run on, right? I haven't talked to Kamala about what her plans are.
I don't personally know if I would run for president if I was her. And if she does, she has to get a real connection with the people. I think that's something that she's always been missing.
And it isn't just the rank and file firing shots. Mark Halperin says Team Biden's locked and loaded to drop dirt if Kamala starts spilling the tea about Joe's brain fog.
I will tell you, and this has never been reported barely at all, if the Biden people decide that Kamala Harris is coming after Joe Biden, wait till you hear the Palin-esque stories about how much they tried to help her be prepared to be vice president and be in a position to run, and how much they decided not happening. She's not up to this.
I cannot wait for Biden world to drop that dirty bomb on Harris.
I mean, what more is there to say? I honestly don't know how it could get any worse. Well, here's the thing, and this is coming from me. Everyone is being entirely too nice. The first Democrat that will be the one that has the guts to say, enough, she should not run. I do not want her in my district. If she wants to be helpful, she can go raise a bunch of money because so many people gave so much money to her in those 107 days, and they lost it all. And she's out there saying, oh, the system's broken, the system's broken. Look, she ran a terrible campaign. She was an uninspiring candidate. She lost big time. I've never seen the system work so well.
I mean, the system was such a mess that Trump was reelected. That's the point, isn't it, Jessica? Tell me I'm right.
No. I think 2028 is going to be a clean slate election. I don't think that there's an appetite to repeat anything that happened through the 2024 cycle as it relates to Joe Biden or Kamala Harris. Now, that doesn't mean that people shouldn't be giving her, frankly, her flowers for what she turned around, because we have swing state senators that would have never won their races had Biden been on top of the ticket. So we have Ruben Gallego, Jackie Rosen in Nevada, Tammy Baldwin, Wisconsin, Alyssa Slotkin in Michigan, who all outperformed her, but still didn't have that level of a drag. And it would have been a historic loss had she not come in those 107 days. But I expect that we'll have a new candidate.
Do you think that Kamala would be stupid enough, and I'm answering my question already, to go at Joe? Because eventually she's going to be asked by a reporter, what did you see and how bad was it? And if she takes a shot, it could get ugly.
That's why I feel like what we're seeing right now is the simmering before the volcano erupts. And we're popping popcorn and buying tickets and watching this infighting play out. And what's horrifying about it is that we're seeing it's about reputation management, not leadership. These two were the president and the vice president of the entire country. And now we are realizing that they're sort of engaged in like a chicken contest over which preemptive cover-up sort of shows that neither was fit to lead. And here's the thing. If the Biden camp really believes that she was Palin-esque, well, then why did they shield her? Why did they elevate her? Why did they tell us that she was the future of the party? And if she believes or believed that he was mentally incompetent or unfit to lead, then why did she stay silent the entire time, including up until pretty much now? So that just proves that it's not about loyalty. It was about silence. It wasn't about service. It was about sort of transaction between the two of them. So yes, I see that this is the kind of OK corral that doesn't end well for both of them. Like both of them are going to be proverbially laying in the dirt after if they start airing their dirty laundry. You know, it's your friends that they both cheat on each other and they're threatening to sort of out the other one at the dinner table. Go ahead and both of you do it because you are both wrong. But to me, this is a horrifying example of where the Democrat Party's leadership is today.
Mutually assured destruction.
Yeah.
You know, if there's any industry that you can unashamedly, completely lie about everything and reinvent yourself, it's American politics. I mean, Robert Byrd was in the KKK. Reagan was a Democrat. Ted Kennedy killed a woman. Hillary Clinton allegedly killed everybody. You can reinvent yourself and come out
allegedly.
If you are willing to ignore.
That was responsible of him.
Yeah. No, I'm not. No.
Mr. Responsibility.
Yeah, there we go. But the point is, like, I'm not going to predict 2028 because I remember the Tea Party. And the two big names from the Tea Party I remember are Michelle Bachmann and Ted Cruz. Michelle Bachmann she didn't take her career anywhere, and Ted Cruz morphed and changed enough to stick around and do well even against Trump. So what are we going to do here? What are the Democrats going to do? I think it's probably somebody in the House that we don't talk about every day, or somebody at a state level. I don't think it's any of these governors that's going to win against Ron DeSantis or J.D. Vance. But I do think they'll come with some talent, and I think it will be a clean slate. Kamala Harris specifically, I don't know that she has a political career in front of her. I think, and not because she can't, not because what she's done is so bad that it won't be allowed. I think she's hit maximum capacity of her talents, and it's not enough. And that's not an indictment on her character. It's just that she doesn't have the communication skills to make up for the baggage she'll drag with her being a part of the Biden.
She just doesn't have good genes, is what you're saying.
I think she has wonderful genes.
Her talent is here. It just can't go any higher.
I've never seen her in
very
jeans.
attractive.
I wasn't talking about that.
Yes, you were. You always
I wasn't talking about the exterior.
Okay. Does Kamala Harris has good genes? In the chat right now, let's know yes or no. Yes or no. Does she have good genes? But of course, I got to give a shout out to Dr. Luke the GOAT. Thank you for the super chat. He says, Jessica wishes they wouldn't repeat the same nonsense. Of course, she does. But the party is invested and in nonsense and paid to push it. That's jams. That is absolute jams from Dr. Luke the GOAT. Says the party is invested and in nonsense and paid to push it. They probably would have Kamala Harris and Jasmine Crockett to run for president and vice president in 2028. Maybe. Who knows? I got to tell you. But I see people in the chat are saying that Kamala Harris has good genes. All right. Good genes. Okay. With that being said, we normally don't go on NBC, but tonight, let's see what I got to say.
Joining me now is the director of the White House National Economic Council, Kevin Hassett. Mr. Hassett, welcome to Meet the Press.
Great to be here. Thank you.
It's great to have you here. Let's start with President Trump's decision to fire the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, Erica McIntyre, who he accused of manipulating job numbers. Mr. Hassett, what evidence does the administration have that she manipulated the jobs numbers?
Right. Well, what we've seen over the last few years is massive revisions to the jobs numbers. In fact, they were extremely reliable, the kind of numbers that you want to guide policy decisions and markets through COVID. And then when COVID happened, because response rates went down a lot, then revision rates skyrocketed so that the typical monthly revision often was bigger than the number itself. And now we had a number that just came out. The actual number for the month wasn't so bad, but the 2 months before were revised down by more than had ever happened since 1968. And in 2015, Alan Greenspan and I were asked to attend a conference at BLS where we were asked to give advice about how to modernize the data. And we warned that if they didn't try to let the data collection and calculation keep up with the data that was happening in the economy, that we would have problems like this. And finally, in the UK, they had a very similar problem. And in 2023, they had to, for a while, shut down the data agency in the UK for the same kinds of problems.
But just to be very clear, does the administration have any evidence that it was rigged, as the president said? And will you be presenting that to the American public?
Well, the evidence is that there have been a bunch of revisions that could appear to partisans. Well, I mean, the revisions are hard evidence. There, for example, there was a 818,000 revision making the Joe Biden job record a lot worse that came out after he withdrew from the presidential campaign. There have been a bunch of patterns that could make people wonder. And I think the most important thing for people to know is that it's the president's highest priority that the data be trusted and that people get to the bottom of why these revisions are so unreliable.
Well, let me ask you about what William Beach, he was the last commissioner of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. He was appointed by President Trump. He was sharply critical of this decision to get rid of his successor. I want to read you what he wrote. He says, quote, "These numbers are constructed by hundreds of people. They're finalized by about 40 people. These 40 people are very professional people who've served under Republicans and Democrats. And the commissioner does not see these numbers until the Wednesday prior to the release on Friday. By that time, the numbers are completely set into the IT system. They've been programmed. They are simply reported to the commissioner so the commissioner can on Thursday brief the president's economic team. The commissioner doesn't have any hand or any influence or any way of even knowing the data until they're completely done." Isn't this the very definition of shooting the messenger?
No, absolutely not. I mean, the bottom line is that there were people involved in creating these numbers. And if I were running the BLS and I had a number that was a huge politically important revision, the biggest since 1968, actually revisions should be smaller, right, because computers are better and so on, then I would have a really long report explaining exactly what happened. And we didn't get that. We didn't get that. And so right now, people, Goldman Sachs, people on Wall Street are wondering, where did these revisions come from and why do they keep happening? And what we need is a fresh set of eyes over at the BLS. And there are great career staffers. One of the top BLS staffers is actually working in the White House to help us understand the jobs numbers. When I saw the jobs revisions, I literally called up that person and said, I think there's a typo. Because I've been following these numbers all the way back when I worked with Alan Greenspan for something like 40 years, and I've never seen revisions like this.
But just to be very clear, I mean, there 40 people put these numbers together. Is the president planning to fire all 40 people involved in?
Another big shout out to Dr. Luke the GOAT. God bless you. Thank you for the super chat. Dr. Luke the GOAT says, the Dems will start winning again when Americans get comfortable and stop trying. It's kind of scary, to be honest. When Americans get comfortable and stop trying, it's kind of scary, to be honest. Hopefully, Americans never, ever get comfortable. And I hope Americans never stop trying, because that is Americans' strength in keeping on, never giving up, and keep on trying. That is the strength that Americans wield. Okay? Shout out to Dr. Luke the GOAT. God bless you for the super chat. The GOAT.
Putting these numbers together?
We're going to try to get the numbers so that they're transparent and reliable.
President Trump himself was happy to accept the jobs numbers issued under McIntyre's leadership when the numbers were good. Take a listen to what he said in the past.
The numbers were much better, as you know, than projected by the media.
In 3 months, we have created 350,000 jobs. Think of that.
A lot of jobs are being created. That's what happened this morning. We saw the jobs.
So is the president prepared to fire anyone who reports data that he disagrees with?
No, absolutely not. The president wants his own people there so that when we see the numbers, they're more transparent and more reliable. And if there are big changes and big revisions, we expect more big revisions for the jobs data in September, for example, then we want to know why. We want people to explain it to us.
All right, but bottom line, were the numbers wrong? Do you have any hard evidence that you can present to the American public that these numbers, these revisions that were reported, and there were plenty of revisions under former President Biden, including right before the election, do you have any hard evidence that these numbers were wrong?
Yeah, there is very hard evidence that we're looking at the biggest revision since 1968.
Are you going to present
if
that
you look
evidence?
at the number itself, it is the evidence.
But just saying it's an outlier is not evidence, Mr. Hassett.
It's a historically important outlier. It's something that's unprecedented.
Still
so unprecedented
it's still
that
not
I've been looking at
evidence,
it for
though.
40 years, and I'm like, it must be a typo.
Okay. All right.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and
All right, more from the same interview right here. Here we go. Uh-oh. Oh, that was the 5 minutes. All right, here we go. Kevin Hassett here on NBC.
Is the director of the White House National Economic Council, Kevin Hassett. Mr. Hassett, welcome to Meet the Press.
Great to be here. Thank you.
It's great to have you here. Let's start with President Trump's decision to fire the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, Erica McIntyre, who he accused of manipulating job numbers. Mr. Hassett, what evidence does the administration have that she manipulated the jobs numbers?
Right. Well, what we've seen over the last few years is massive revisions to the jobs numbers. In fact, they were extremely reliable, the kind of numbers that you want to guide policy decisions and markets through COVID. And then when COVID happened, because response rates went down a lot, then revision rates skyrocketed so that the typical monthly revision often was bigger than the number itself. And now we had a number that just came out. The actual number for the month wasn't so bad, but the 2 months before were revised down by more than had ever happened since 1968. And in 2015, Alan Greenspan and I were asked to attend a conference at BLS where we were asked to give advice about how to modernize the data. And we warned that if they didn't try to let the data collection and calculation keep up with the data that was happening in the economy, that we would have problems like this. And finally, in the UK, they had a very similar problem. And in 2023, they had to, for a while, shut down the data agency in the UK for the same kinds of problems.
But just to be very clear, does the administration have any evidence that it was rigged, as the president said? And will you be presenting that to the American public?
Well, the evidence is that there have been a bunch of revisions that could appear to partisans. Oh, I mean, the revisions are hard evidence. For example, there was a 818,000 revision making the Joe Biden job record a lot worse that came out after he withdrew from the presidential campaign. There have been a bunch of patterns that could make people wonder. And I think the most important thing for people to know is that it's the president's highest priority that the data be trusted and that people get to the bottom of why these revisions are so unreliable.
Well, let me ask you about what William Beach, he was the last commissioner of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. He was appointed by President Trump. He was sharply critical of this decision to get rid of his successor. I want to read you what he wrote. He says, quote, "These numbers are constructed by hundreds of people. They're finalized by about 40 people. These 40 people are very professional people who've served under Republicans and Democrats. And the commissioner does not see these numbers until the Wednesday prior to the release on Friday. By that time, the numbers are completely set into the IT system. They've been programmed. They are simply reported to the commissioner so the commissioner can on Thursday brief the president's economic team. The commissioner doesn't have any hand or any influence or any way of even knowing the data until they're completely done." Isn't this the very definition of shooting the messenger?
No, absolutely not. I mean, the bottom line is that there were people involved in creating these numbers. And if I were running the BLS and I had a number that was a huge politically important revision, the biggest since 1968, actually revisions should be smaller, right? Because computers are better and so on. Then I would have a really long report explaining exactly what happened. And we didn't get that. We didn't get that. And so right now, people, Goldman Sachs, people on Wall Street are wondering, where did these revisions come from and why do they keep happening? And what we need is a fresh set of eyes over at the BLS. And there are great career staffers. One of the top BLS staffers is actually working in the White House to help us understand the jobs numbers. When I saw the jobs revisions, I literally called up that person and said, I think there's a typo. Because I've been following these numbers all the way back when I worked with Alan Greenspan for something like 40 years, and I've never seen revisions like this.
But just to be very clear, I mean, there are 40 people put these numbers together? Is the president planning to fire all 40 people involved in putting these numbers together?
We're going to try to get the numbers so that they're transparent and reliable.
President Trump himself was happy to accept the jobs numbers issued under McIntyre's leadership when the numbers were good. Take a listen to what he said in the past.
The numbers were much better, as you know, than projected by the media.
In 3 months, we have created 350,000 jobs. Think of that.
A lot of jobs are being created. That's what happened this morning. We saw the jobs.
So is the president prepared to fire anyone who reports data that he disagrees with?
No, absolutely not. The president wants his own people there so that when we see the numbers, they're more transparent and more reliable. And if there are big changes and big revisions, we expect more big revisions for the jobs data in September, for example, then we want to know why. We want people to explain it to us.
All right, but bottom line, were the numbers wrong? Do you have any hard evidence that you can present to the American public that these numbers, these revisions that were reported, and there were plenty of revisions under former President Biden, including right before the election, do you have any hard evidence that these numbers were wrong?
Yeah, there is very hard evidence that we're looking at the biggest revision since 1968.
Are you going to present
if
that
you look
evidence?
at the number itself, it is the evidence.
But just saying it's an outlier is not evidence, Mr. Hassett.
It's a historically important outlier. It's something that's unprecedented.
Still
so unprecedented
it's still
that
not
I've been looking at it
evidence,
for 40 years, and I'm like, it must be a typo.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to tariffs, the other big news of this week. Are the tariff rates locked in, or are they still up for negotiation?
I think we have 8 deals that cover about 55% of world GDP with our biggest trading partners, the EU and Japan and Korea and so on. And I expect that those matters are more or less locked in, although there'll have to be some dancing around the edges about exactly what we mean when we do this or that. For the deals that aren't ready yet, they're going to get the reciprocal rates soon. And then we would expect that there might continue to be negotiations with those countries.
But for those 8 deals that you say are deals that are announced, you're saying more or less. Are they locked in?
Yeah, I mean, the president will decide what the president decides, but the president likes those deals. The Europeans like those deals, and they're absolutely historically wonderful deals. Think about it. We've got Europe agreeing to open their markets to our products, so our farmers, our small businessmen can sell stuff in Europe like they never could before, and they're letting us charge a 50% tariff, which is going to raise maybe about $100 billion a year.
And I think people are curious because they remember that back in April when President Trump first announced these tariffs, he then backtracked when the bond market was spooked. Could a market reaction prompt President Trump to change these tariff rates again?
The markets have seen what we're doing and celebrated them. And so I don't see how that would happen.
Okay, but not ruling it out.
No, I would rule it out because these are the final deals.
All right, let's talk about prices now. New inflation data released this week shows higher prices on products like household furniture, clothing. You have companies like Adidas, Procter & Gamble, Black & Decker, all saying they will increase prices. They cite the tariffs. Prices are already up on some of Amazon's products, as you know. President Trump campaigned on a promise to bring prices down. What is your message to Americans who feel like the president's breaking that promise?
Well, he's not. In fact, every measure of inflation, if you aggregate it, if you look at the top line numbers, is lower than it's been in 5 months. And we just had the GDP release this week, which was a healthy 3%. And the most important GDP inflation number said it was 2.1%. And so inflation has come down a lot. That number, by the way, the 2.1% was 3.7%. That's the number that President Trump inherited. And so inflation has come down, and inflation has come down for a lot of reasons. But I think the main reason is that we're no longer printing money and sending it to people like the Bidens did. That's a recipe for inflation.
Okay, let me ask you about this talk of tariff rebates. The president consistently arguing that consumers don't pay tariffs. If that is the case, Mr. Hassett, why would you issue a rebate?
Well, what's going to happen, right, is the CBO has estimated that we're going to get $3 trillion more in revenue. And so what Congress is going to do when they see all that revenue is they're going to decide what are we going to do with it. They could use it all to reduce the debt, or they could give some of it back to consumers. And the president looks forward to working with Congress in the second half of the year to decide on what the best way to use that money is. In fact, we think that the CBO estimate of $3 trillion is now pretty low given the new deals that we've had.
What do you think Congress should do? Rebates or work to pay down the debt? Because you you have, for example, some Republican senators, Senator Rick Scott, we ought to do everything we can to give money back to the American public, but we've got to first balance our budget.
Well, I think that there are a lot of people that think that balancing the budget is a top priority for the economy right now, but we're also mindful of the fact that there's a legislative process where people dicker over the details, and so I'm not sure. I can't predict right now which way it's going to end up.
There's been a lot of focus on Fed Chair Jerome Powell. Obviously, President Trump really pressuring him to lower interest rates, which he did not do. So the question becomes, who will replace him once his term ends? If President Trump taps you to be the next Fed chair, will you accept? Do you want to be?
I've been working with the president for about 8 years, and as one of his closest economic advisors, of course, we've talked about the Federal Reserve. Right now, he set up an active search with Secretary Hassett, and they're going to go through a list of names, and I'm sure the president will pick the best available person.
Well, if that's you, will you say yes?
We'll have to see if he chooses me, but I think that I have the best job in the world, and I'm really well placed at the National Economic Council.
In general, should a Fed chair take direction from the Oval Office or from the economic conditions?
I think that a Fed chair should listen to all the voices, especially their critics, to try to think about what am I getting right, what am I getting wrong. The Fed chair also has a transparency responsibility, which I think that Jay has fallen down on a little bit, that if you're going to come out and say, for example, that you think that tariffs are going to cause inflation, then for goodness sake, you should put out a model that explains how much inflation and why you think that way, because there are others that disagree. Have a lively academic debate. And if you're going to actually put your finger on the scale of tariffs cause inflation, then you need to explain why. I don't think that the Fed or the BLS should be a black box. I think it should be transparent.
All right. Before I let you go, President Trump has now been in office for more than 6 months. Is this now the Trump economy?
Yeah, I mean, there is definitely a lot of policy yet to happen. We've just passed the big, beautiful bill. It's going into effect in July, and it's going to have a massive impact on the economy. There are residual problems that we've inherited, in part the runaway spending from the previous term. And so whose economy is it is more of a political question than an economist question.
But you just touted all the benefits that you see at this
with
point.
The eye on the horizon.
Does the president own the economy at this point? He's been in office for 6 months.
With the eye on the horizon,
6 months.
Economic outlook is huge. It's great. We've got the big, beautiful bill. We've got AI increasing productivity. We've got everything, and we've got all the tariff revenue coming in. So we have every confidence that the economy is headed way, way up from here.
All right. Kevin Hassett, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for tuning in to the live show. I got to give a shout out to our esteemed member, Dr. Luke, the GOAT. God bless you. He is called the GOAT for a reason. So, the GOAT, Dr. Luke, God bless you. I got to give a shout out to Ellie, Sandra, Ringmaster, Ingram. Thank you as well for being members. I also got to give a shout out to our moderators, Good Jeans, C. Shelley, MVP Jet, Bucket Master Busky, Zyra's Garden, Enders. God bless you. Who else, man? Everybody who tuned in, God bless you. We're going to be back. We're definitely going to be back. But I got to take my beautiful daughter out to go get some dinner because it's about time. Yep, I know, boo-boo. And we're going out right now. Shout out to Corey B for sure. God bless you. CRXR. God bless you. We're going to be back, ladies and gentlemen. So subscribe to the channel. Turn on your notification bell. And be a member of the channel because we will be back and we have a good time on this channel. As you can see, we have a good time. With that being said, God is the greatest. America is the greatest nation on the face of the earth. God made it so. Shout out to law enforcement officers. Shout out to Ice Baby. Shout out to the veterans. Shout out to the military personnel. Without you guys, there would be no homeland. And with that being said, God bless you. It is your boy Genesis, and you are tuned into the Genesis Show. We will be back. See you soon.